She walked into that frozen hell of a town with nothing but grief and a dead man's tools, and they laughed at her. But what happened next in that barn, during the storm that nearly killed them all, would change everything. This is the story of how a widow from across the ocean became the one thing a dying ranch couldn't survive without. Stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The wind off the Montana plains didn't just blow, it cut. It carved through fabric, skin, bone, straight down to whatever parts of a person still believed they might survive the winter. Lian Zhao felt every inch of it as she pushed through the doorway of Hendrick's General Store, the bell overhead clanging like a drunk man's laughter. Inside wasn't much warmer. She stood just past the threshold, her fingers numb around the leather handles of the case she carried. The silk dress she wore, the only good thing she owned, was meant for San Francisco parlors, not frontier towns where the January cold made your teeth ache. Her husband had bought it for her 3 years ago, back when he still smiled, back before the cough that turned his lungs to rot. The store smelled like tobacco, old wood, and the kind of sweat that came from men who didn't care much about washing. 3 of them leaned against the counter, cards spread between them, bottles half empty. They looked up when she entered. One of them grinned. "Well, hell," he said. "What do we got here?" Lian didn't answer. She walked toward the counter where Samuel Hendricks stood, a thick man with a beard that looked like it had survived more winters than most people. He watched her approach with the expression of someone who'd already decided she wasn't worth his time. "Help you?" he asked, not moving. "I need to sell," Lian said. Her English was clear but carried the weight of another language underneath it, syllables that didn't quite fit the shape of the words. "Tools. Very good tools." She set the case on the counter. The leather was worn but well kept, the brass latches still bright. When she opened it, the men leaned in. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, lay a complete set of woodworking tools, chisels with handles smooth as river stones, planes that gleamed even in the dim light, saws with teeth so precise they looked like they'd been set by a jeweler. Every piece marked with the maker's stamp, a lotus flower, wrapped in thorns. Master Feng's mark, a legend, even here. "My husband," Lian said quietly. "He make furniture, very careful, very perfect. These tools, they cost him everything." Hendricks picked up one of the chisels, turned it over, set it down. "Chinese work," he muttered. "Yes. Don't know that anyone around here needs tools like these." One of the card players laughed. "What's a Chinaman's widow doing this far north anyway? Thought your kind stuck to the railroad camps." Lian's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes on Hendricks. "How much?" "For all of it?" He scratched his beard. $20. The number hit her like a fist. $20. The set had cost her husband $200 when he'd bought it in Sacramento, back when he still had dreams of opening his own shop. She'd watched him oil each piece every Sunday, hands trembling toward the end, coughing blood into rags he tried to hide from her. "They worth more," she said. "Maybe in San Francisco. Not here." Hendricks pushed the case toward her. 20, or you can haul them somewhere else." 30. 20. One of the card players stood, walked over. He was younger than the others, with a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't twisted into a smirk. "You know what I think? I think she don't even know what she's got. Probably stole them." "I did not steal." "How's a woman going to know the first thing about tools anyway?" He picked up the smoothing plane, held it wrong, turned it over like it was a toy. "Pretty, though. Might make a nice decoration." "Put it down," Lian said. "Or what?" The door opened. Cold air rolled in, and with it, a man who looked like he'd been carved from the same granite as the mountains outside. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind into something hard and permanent. He wore a heavy coat that had seen better years, boots that had walked through more mud and blood than most men would see in a lifetime. His hat was pulled low, but his eyes, pale gray, sharp as winter light, took in the room in one sweep. Cole Mercer. Even Lian, who'd only been in town 3 days, knew the name. Owned the largest ranch within 50 miles. Ran it with a crew of men who were loyal either because they respected him or because they were too afraid not to. Didn't come into town often. When he did, people noticed. The card players straightened. The one holding the plane set it down. "Mercer," Hendricks said, trying for friendly. Didn't expect you today. Cole didn't answer. He walked to the counter, his boots loud on the wooden floor, and stopped next to Leon. He smelled like horses and smoke and something else, pine maybe, or the clean bite of high country air. He looked down at the tools. Then he picked up the dovetail saw. His hands were scarred, knuckles thick from work and fighting, but the way he held the saw, careful, testing the weight, running his thumb along the spine, told Leon something important. This man knew tools, really knew them. Master Feng, Cole said quietly, reading the stamp. Leon's breath caught. You know? I know enough. He set the saw down, picked up one of the chisels, held it to the light. These aren't just good, they're perfect. The kind of thing you pass down, not sell. I have no choice. Cole's eyes shifted to her. Up close, she could see the lines around them, the gray threading through his dark hair. He wasn't old, but he'd lived hard. What happened? My husband died 2 months ago. I have nothing. Where you from? Guangzhou, then San Francisco, then here. Long way. Yes. Hendricks cleared his throat. Look, Mercer, I was just about to make this lady a fair offer. $20 isn't fair, Cole said. His voice was level, but there was iron underneath. It's theft. Now hold on. These tools are worth $200 minimum, probably more to the right buyer. Cole picked up another chisel, examined the edge. You know it, I know it, she knows it. The younger card player stepped forward. Maybe you should mind your own business, Mercer. Cole didn't even look at him. Maybe you should sit down before you say something that gets you hurt. The man's hand moved toward his belt, toward the knife there, and suddenly the room got very small and very quiet. Leon felt her heart hammering. She'd seen fights before, in the railroad camps, quick and brutal things that ended with blood on the ground and men dragged away. But Cole just turned slowly and looked at the younger man. Didn't say anything, didn't have to. Whatever the man saw in those pale gray eyes made him go still, made his hand drop, made him step back. Smart, Cole said. He turned back to the tools, started closing the case. I'll give you $100 for them. Leon stared. What? $100. Right now. That is too much. No, it's not. He pulled a roll of bills from his coat, counted out 5 20s, set them on the counter. But I want something else, too. Here it comes, Leon thought. The catch. The thing that would make this another humiliation. Another, I want you to come out to my ranch, Cole said. Use these tools. Fix something for me. I don't understand. My barn's got a door that won't close right. Been stuck for 2 years. Every carpenter I've hired says the wood's warped too bad. Needs to be replaced. But I watched you hold these tools. I saw your face when that idiot picked up the plane wrong. You know this craft. I am not carpenter, Leon said. My husband... Your husband's dead, Cole said. Not cruel, just stating fact. You're not. And you didn't just carry these tools across half the country because they were expensive. You carried them because you know what they can do. Leanne's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the counter. If I cannot fix the door, then you keep the $100 and we're square. But if you can... He picked up the case, held it out to her. Then maybe we talk about something more permanent. Why would you... Because I need someone who gives a damn about doing things right, Cole said. And because everyone else in this room has already decided you're nothing. I'd like to see them proven wrong. Hendricks made a noise in his throat. Cole, you can't be serious. She's a... Careful, Cole said softly. The word hung in the air like a blade. Hendricks shut his mouth. Cole looked back at Leon. Your choice. Take the money and walk, or take the money and take a chance. Leon looked down at the bills on the counter. $100. More than she'd seen since her husband died. Enough to buy a train ticket east, maybe find work in Chicago or New York, somewhere she could disappear into a Chinatown and try to rebuild. Or she thought of her husband's hands, the way they'd moved over wood like he was reading Braille, feeling for the grain, the weak spots, the places where a piece wanted to split or hold. He'd tried to teach her in those last months when he was too weak to work himself. She'd been clumsy at first, frustrated. But slowly, she'd started to understand. Started to see what he saw. How far is your ranch? She asked. 12 miles northeast. Road's rough, but the wagon'll handle it. When would we go? Now. Now? She blinked. But I am staying at boarding house. My things. We'll stop there. Won't take long. Cole picked up the case. You coming or not? Every instinct Leon had learned since coming to this country screamed at her to refuse. Don't trust strangers. Don't go to isolated places with men you don't know. Don't let desperation make you stupid. But she looked at Cole Mercer's face, hard, scarred, but honest in a way Hendricks hadn't been, and she thought about the alternative. Thought about selling the tools to Hendricks for $20, watching him turn around and sell them for 10 times that. Thought about the long winter ahead, about how quickly $100 could disappear in a frontier town where rooms cost $2 a night and every meal was an expense. Yes, she said, I come. Cole nodded. He handed her the case, then picked up the bills from the counter, pressed them into her hand. His fingers were rough, warm against her cold skin. Then let's go. The wagon was old but solid, pulled by 2 draft horses that looked like they could drag a house if they had to. Cole drove in silence, and Leon sat beside him, the tool case on her lap, watching the landscape change from the rough buildings of town to the endless white expanse of the plains. The sky was the color of old iron, heavy with the promise of more snow. Wind rattled through the bare cottonwoods that lined the frozen creek they followed. Leon pulled her thin coat tighter, but it didn't help much. After a while, Cole reached behind the seat, pulled out a heavy wool blanket, and handed it to her without a word. Thank you, she said. He grunted. More silence. The horse's breath steamed in the cold. The wagon wheels crunched through snow and frozen mud. Why did you help me? Leanne finally asked. Cole kept his eyes on the road. Told you, I need that door fixed. You could hire someone from town. I tried, didn't work. But I am woman, Chinese. You don't know if I can. I saw your hands, Cole said. When you opened that case, you touched every tool just for a second, making sure they were all there, that they were clean, that they were right. That's not someone who just owns tools. That's someone who uses them. Lynn didn't know what to say to that. They stopped at the boarding house long enough for her to gather her few belongings, a change of clothes, her husband's wedding ring on a chain, a photograph they'd had taken in San Francisco. The landlady, Mrs. Perkins, looked relieved when Leon said she was leaving. You paid through Friday, she said. I'll keep the difference for the trouble. What trouble? Leon wanted to ask. But she didn't. She just took her bag and left. Back in the wagon, wrapped in the blanket with her small suitcase at her feet, Leon watched the world get bigger and emptier. They passed a few scattered homesteads, smoke rising from chimneys, but mostly it was just white land and gray sky and the constant cutting wind. You scared? Cole asked eventually. Leon thought about it. Yes. Good. Means you're smart. He glanced at her. But being scared and being stupid aren't the same thing. You made a choice, now you see it through. And if I fail? Then you fail. Won't be the first time someone failed at my place. Something that might have been a smile touched his mouth. Hell, won't even be the first time today. Despite everything, Leon almost laughed. They rode on. The ranch appeared as the sun started its early winter descent, shadows stretching long across the snow. It wasn't what Leon had expected. She'd imagined something rough, maybe even crude. A few shacks and a corral. But the Mercer Ranch was substantial. A main house built from logs and stone, smoke curling from 2 chimneys, a long bunkhouse for the hands, several barns, corrals with good fencing, a windmill that creaked as it turned, and men, a dozen, maybe more, moving between buildings, tending horses, carrying feed. They stopped when they saw the wagon, watched as Cole drove it toward the largest barn. A man emerged from the bunkhouse, older, grizzled, with a limp that suggested an old injury. He walked over as Cole reined in the horses. Boss, he said. Then his eyes found Leanne, and his expression shifted into something unreadable. Didn't know you were bringing company. This is Mrs. Zhao, Cole said, climbing down. She's here to fix the barn door. The man stared. The barn door. That's right, Frank. The barn door that's been busted for 2 years, the one that Jackson said couldn't be fixed and Brennan said needed full replacement, and I know what they said. Cole walked around to Leon's side, offered his hand to help her down. She took it, grateful. Her legs were stiff from the cold. I want to see what she says. Frank looked at Leon like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. No offense, ma'am, but none taken, Leon said quietly. Other men were drifting over now, drawn by curiosity. Young ones and old ones, hard-faced and scarred from weather and work. They all had the same look Frank did, disbelief mixed with something else. Amusement, maybe. Or pity, Leanne, Cole said, and the use of her first name surprised her. This is Frank Dawson, my foreman. He'll show you where you'll sleep, get you fed. Tomorrow morning, we'll look at the door. Tomorrow? Frank said. It's almost dark now, and tomorrow, Cole repeated. There was no argument in his voice because there was no room for one. Frank sighed. Yes, sir. He looked at Leon, softened his tone just slightly. Come on, ma'am, I'll take you to the house. We got a spare room. I don't want to be trouble, Leon said. Too late for that, one of the younger hands muttered, just loud enough to hear. Frank spun. You got something to say, Miller? The young man, blond, cocky-looking, shrugged. Just wondering what we're doing is all. Bringing in... He gestured vaguely at Leon. I mean, no disrespect, but... Then don't disrespect, Cole said. His voice was quiet, but every man there heard it. Mrs. Zhao is here to do a job. You'll treat her accordingly or you'll find somewhere else to work. That clear? Silence. I said, is that clear? Yes, sir, came the muttered replies. Cole nodded. Good. Frank, get her settled. The rest of you, back to work. The men dispersed, some faster than others. Frank picked up Leanne's suitcase and the tool case, though she kept a hand on the latter, unwilling to let it go completely, and led her toward the main house. It was warmer inside, a fire burning in a large stone fireplace. The room was simply furnished but clean, a table, chairs, shelves with books and tools, and things that suggested this was a place where people lived and worked, not just survived. Rooms this way, Frank said, leading her down a short hall. He opened a door to a small space with a bed, a dresser, a window that looked out over the corral. Ain't fancy, but it's warm and the roof don't leak. It's good, Leon said. Thank you. Frank set down her suitcase, hesitated. Look, ma'am, I don't know what Cole told you, but that barn door, it's not just stuck. It's a goddamn nightmare. Wood swelled during a wet spring, dried wrong, warped to hell. 3 different carpenters looked at it. All said the same thing. Cut your losses, build new. Your boss thinks different, Leon said. Yeah, well, Frank scratched his jaw. Boss thinks a lot of things. Some of them even turn out right. He paused. You really know how to work wood? I know some. Some. Frank sighed. All right, dinner's at 6. You'll hear the bell. Can't miss it. He left, closing the door behind him. Leanne sat on the bed, felt the straw mattress give under her weight. She was alone for the first time since morning, and the silence pressed in. She thought about her husband, about the way he'd look at a piece of wood, the way he'd talk to it sometimes, whispering in Cantonese like it could understand him. Feel the grain, he'd say. The wood wants to be something. Your job is to help it. She'd laughed the first time he said it. Wood doesn't want anything. It's dead. No, he'd insisted. It was alive once. It remembers. You have to listen. At the time, she'd thought it was poetry. The kind of thing her husband said because he'd been raised by craftsmen who treated their work like religion. But in those last months, when she'd taken over his commissions because he was too weak to hold the tools steady, she'd started to understand. There was something in the wood, memory, structure, a kind of logic that revealed itself if you paid attention. She stood, walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the snow orange and pink. Men moved through the twilight, finishing their work. One of them, Miller, the blonde one, glanced up at her window, saw her watching, and smirked before walking away. Leon let the curtain fall. Dinner was exactly what she expected. Stew, bread, coffee, strong enough to strip paint. She sat at the end of the long table in the bunkhouse. The men arranged around her like she was either a curiosity or a threat. They hadn't decided which. Cole sat at the head, eating in silence. Frank was to his right, occasionally glancing between his boss and Leanne like he was waiting for someone to explain the joke, "So," one of the men finally said, older, with a beard that reached his chest. "You really a carpenter, ma'am?" "No," Leon said honestly. "My husband was. Then how? I learned from him before he died. And now you think you can fix what 3 professionals couldn't?" That was Miller again, his tone just shy of mocking. Leon met his eyes. "I think I will try." "Trying's not the same as doing." "No," she agreed, "but not trying is same as failing." A few of the men chuckled at that. Miller's face reddened. "How'd your husband die?" another man asked. Not cruel, just curious. "Sickness. His lungs." "Sorry to hear it." "Thank you." Cole stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. "Early start tomorrow. Everyone get some sleep." It was a dismissal. The men filed out, some nodding to Leanne, others avoiding her eyes entirely. She helped Frank clear the dishes. He tried to wave her off, but she insisted, and then walked back to the main house through the freezing night. Cole was waiting outside her door. "You all right?" he asked. "Yes." "Men give you any trouble?" "Nothing I cannot handle." He studied her for a moment. "You don't have to prove anything tomorrow. The door's busted. If it can't be fixed, it can't be fixed." "You paid me $100, Leon said. "I will try to earn it." "Fair enough." He turned to go, then stopped. "One more thing. If any of them step out of line, any of them, you tell me. Understood?" "Why do you care?" Cole looked at her, and for the first time something like warmth touched his expression. "Because I remember what it's like to be the one everyone's decided doesn't belong. And because if you can fix that door, you'll have earned more respect than most of those men ever will." He walked away, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. Leanne closed her door, leaned against it, and tried to ignore the fear crawling up her spine. Morning came early and brutal. Someone knocked on her door before dawn, Frank, telling her breakfast was ready. She dressed in the warmest clothes she had, which still weren't warm enough, and made her way to the bunkhouse. The men were already eating, shoveling down eggs and bacon and biscuits like they were fueling for a war. Cole was there, looking like he hadn't slept. When he saw her, he stood. "Ready?" "Yes." They walked to the barn through snow that crunched underfoot. The sky was just starting to lighten, streaks of pale gold cutting through the darkness. Leon's breath steamed. Her fingers were already numb. The barn was massive, easily 40 feet long, built to house equipment and feed, and probably half a dozen horses in the stalls at the back. But the door... Cole had been right. It was a nightmare. The door itself was 12 feet tall and 8 feet wide, built from thick planks that had probably been beautiful once. But now they were warped, twisted, the wood buckled and split in places. It hung crooked on its hinges, gaps along the frame where wind and snow could get through. "Been like this since the spring 2 years back," Cole said. "We had flooding, then it dried fast. Wood swelled, then shrunk wrong. Every winter since it gets worse." Leon walked up to it, ran her hand along the surface. The wood was rough, splintered, but under the damage she could feel the quality. Oak, old growth, the kind you couldn't get anymore. "You want to replace it?" she asked. "Rather not. This wood, my father cut it himself back when he built this place, means something." She understood. Wood could mean everything. "I need to see tools," she said, "and workspace, and help." "Help? I cannot move this door alone, and I will need fire, to heat metal, to bend wood." Cole nodded slowly. "I'll get you whatever you need." By mid-morning, Leanne had claimed a corner of the barn as her workspace. Cole had brought her a workbench, a portable forge for heating tools and materials, shims, metal brackets, wood glue, strips of wet leather. And he'd assigned 3 men to assist. Frank, because he was good with his hands and wouldn't question orders. A quiet Mexican man named Esteban, who spoke little English but understood tools. And to her surprise, Miller. "You sure about this?" Frank had asked Cole quietly. "Kid's got a mouth on him." "Exactly," Cole had said. "If she can get him to shut up and work, she can handle anything." Now Leanne stood in front of the door with her husband's tools laid out on the bench. 3 skeptical men watching her, and the crushing weight of knowing she had no idea if this would work. "First," she said, "we take door off hinges." Miller snorted. That door weighs 300 pounds. Easy. How exactly? We use rope and pulley, Leon said, pointing to the beam overhead. We lift, we shift, we lower to ground. Slow. Careful. That's going to take hours, Miller said. Yes. And what if it splits? What if we drop it? Then we are more careful. She met his eyes, and something in her expression made him look away first. They worked in silence after that. Frank rigged the pulley system while Esteban gathered rope. Leon examined the hinges, massive iron things forged by hand probably 50 years ago. They were rusted but still strong. We will need to oil these, she said, before we try to move door. Frank nodded, disappeared, came back with a can of thick grease. Together they worked it into the hinges, feeling the resistance give way slowly. It took an hour just for that. Then came the hard part. They looped ropes around the door, secured them to the pulley. 4 of them now. Frank had pulled in another hand, a young guy named Tommy who looked nervous but willing. On Leon's count, they pulled. The door groaned. Steady, Leon said. Even pressure. Don't jerk. Inch by inch, the door lifted. The hinges screamed, metal grinding against metal. Leon watched the wood, saw the planks flexing, heard the creaks that meant stress points. Stop, she said sharply. They froze. Lower, just a little, 2 inches. They did. The groaning eased. Now shift left, small, very small. The door swung slightly, the weight redistributing. Leon held her breath. Good. Now lift again, slow. It took another hour to get the door off its hinges and lowered to the ground without breaking it. By the time they finished, all of them were sweating despite the cold, hands raw from rope burn. Miller sat down hard, breathing heavy. Christ, he muttered. Frank looked at Leanne with new eyes. That was well done, ma'am. Leanne didn't answer. She was already kneeling beside the door, running her hands over the planks, feeling where the wood had warped, where the grain had twisted. She pulled out one of her husband's chisels, tested an edge. What now? Esteban asked in heavily accented English. Now, Leon said, the hard part begins. She worked through the day, stopping only when her hands shook too badly to hold the tools. The first step was to identify every place where the wood had warped, and there were dozens. Some planks had cupped, bending away from the frame. Others had twisted along their length, creating gaps. A few had split entirely, the cracks running deep. For the cupped boards, Leanne used a technique her husband had taught her. She heated water in a basin over the forge until it steamed, then soaked strips of cloth in it and laid them across the warped wood. The heat and moisture would make the fibers swell, become pliable. Then, using clamps and pressure, she could slowly coax them back into shape. It was painstaking work. Each plank took hours. This is insane, Miller said, watching her. We could build a whole new door in the time this is taking. New door would not be same, Leanne said, not looking up. This door has history, has meaning, worth the time. To who? To Mr. Mercer, to his father, maybe to you, if you think about it. Miller didn't have an answer for that. By evening, Leanne had managed to straighten 3 planks. Only 40 more to go. Her back ached, her hands were blistered, and her eyes burned from squinting at the wood in the dim light. Cole came by as the sun set. He stood watching her work for a while, then said, You should eat, rest. Almost finished with this one. Leanne. She looked up. His face was serious. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. Take a break. She wanted to argue, but her stomach was cramping with hunger and her hands were shaking. She set down the chisel. Okay. Dinner that night was quieter. The men had seen her work all day, seen the precision and patience it took. A few of them asked questions, technical ones, about the process, about how she knew which boards to fix first. She answered as best she could, sometimes falling back into Cantonese when the English words wouldn't come, then translating awkwardly. Miller still looked skeptical, but he'd stopped making comments. After dinner, Leanne went back to the barn. She couldn't sleep, couldn't shut off the part of her brain that was planning the next steps, seeing the door as it could be. She found Cole there, standing in front of the dismantled door with a lantern in his hand. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. Never can. He crouched down, touched one of the planks she'd straightened. This is remarkable. Is not finished. I know, but still. He looked up at her. You really think you can fix it? Leon considered the question. I think wood wants to be straight, strong. My job is to remind it. Cole smiled, a real smile, not the ghost of one. Your husband teach you that? Yes. He was a lucky man. No, Leon said quietly. He was sick man. Then he was dead man. Luck had nothing to do with it. The smile faded. I'm sorry. That was thoughtless. It's all right. She sat down on the ground next to the door, pulled her coat tighter. You lost someone too, I think. Cole was quiet for a long moment. My wife. 4 years ago. Fever. I'm sorry. Yeah. He set the lantern down. This ranch was hers before it was mine. Her father built it, left it to her when he died. I was just some cowboy she hired on. She saw something in me I didn't see in myself. He touched the door again. That's why this matters. Why I didn't want to replace it. She used to say, don't throw away what can be saved. Leon understood. She understood completely. They sat in silence for a while, the lantern casting long shadows, the wind howling outside. Finally, Cole stood. You should really sleep. Tomorrow's going to be harder. How can it be harder? Because that's when we see if all this work actually amounts to something. He picked up the lantern. Good night, Leon. Good night. She stayed a while longer, alone with the broken door and the tools and the weight of expectation. Then, finally, she went to bed and dreamed of warped wood in her husband's hands and a door that would never quite close right. 3 days passed in a blur of work. Leon straightened planks, filled splits with wood glue and sawdust mixed to paste, replaced sections that were too damaged to save. Frank and Esteban became her shadows, learning to anticipate what she needed before she asked. Even Miller started pulling his weight, his skepticism giving way to something like grudging respect. On the 4th day, they were ready to rehang the door. By now, half the ranch had heard what was happening. Men drifted over during breaks, watched from a distance. Cole was there, standing with his arms crossed, expression unreadable. The process of rehanging was even more delicate than taking it down. The door had changed. Leon had planned the edges, adjusted the weight distribution, reinforced weak points. It should fit now. In theory. Theory and practice were different things. They used the pulley system again, lifting the door inch by careful inch. Leon guided it, her hands on the wood, feeling for the moment when it would align with the frame. Left, she said. Small. They shifted. Up, just a little. The door rose. There, stop. She positioned the first hinge, lined it up with the pin. Frank slid it home. The door held. Second hinge. Third. When the final hinge was in place, Leon stepped back. Her heart was pounding. This was the moment. If the door didn't hang true, if it still wouldn't close, then everything, all the work, the hope, the $100, was wasted. Lower it, she said. They released the ropes. The door settled onto its hinges with a groan of metal and hung straight. Leanne walked over, put her hand on it, pushed gently. The door swung, smooth, quiet. No scraping, no sticking. She pushed it closed. It fit. The gap at the bottom was gone. The sides sealed against the frame. When she looked up at the top, there was no daylight bleeding through. Perfect. Behind her, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then more, until the sound filled the barn. Leon turned to see the ranch hands gathered there, 20, maybe 30 of them, all watching. Some were grinning. Others looked stunned. Miller was shaking his head, but even he was smiling. Cole walked over. He tested the door himself, swinging it open and closed, examining the fit. Then he looked at Leanne, and in his eyes she saw something that made her chest tighten. Pride. And something else. Something deeper. You did it, he said quietly. We did it, Leanne corrected. Frank, Esteban, Miller, Tommy. Everyone helped. But you knew how. You showed them. He held out his hand. Thank you. She shook it, felt the rough warmth of his palm against hers. The men were still clapping, some of them whistling now. Frank came over, slapped her on the shoulder, gently, but it still made her stumble. Damn fine work, ma'am, damn fine. Esteban said something in Spanish, grinning. Leon didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Even Miller approached, hands shoved in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. I'm sorry for doubting you. It's okay, Leon said. No, it's not. But you proved me wrong, so thanks for that. He held out his hand. She shook it. The celebration lasted into the evening. Someone broke out whiskey, and the men passed it around, toasting Leon, toasting the door, toasting everything. Leon didn't drink. She'd never had a taste for alcohol, but she sat with them, listened to their stories, felt the warmth of acceptance slowly replacing the cold of isolation. Cole found her as the night wound down. Walk with me? They left the bunkhouse, walked out into the clear, frozen night. The stars were brilliant, more than Leon had ever seen in San Francisco. The Milky Way stretched overhead like a river of light. I meant what I said before, Cole told her. About something more permanent. Leon's breath caught. What do you mean? This ranch. It's falling apart, Leon. Not just the barn door. Fences that need fixing, buildings that need shoring up, equipment that's breaking down faster than we can replace it. I need someone who understands craftsmanship, someone who can make things right. He stopped, turned to face her. I need you. You don't know me, she said. I know enough. I know you're skilled. I know you're honest. I know you don't quit when things get hard. He paused. And I know you've got nowhere else to go. Am I wrong? He wasn't wrong. The truth of it sat in her chest like a stone. What are you offering? She asked. A job. A place to stay. Fair wages. And respect. I'll make damn sure of that. For how long? As long as you want. Could be a season. Could be longer. His eyes searched hers. I won't lie to you. It'll be hard work. The winters here are brutal. The men can be rough. But if you're willing, if you're brave enough, there's a future here. A real one. Leon thought about San Francisco, about the boarding houses, and the streets where people looked through her like she was glass. She thought about the railroad camps, the violence and desperation. She thought about her husband's grave, 300 miles south, and the way she'd stood over it knowing she was more alone than she'd ever been. And she thought about the barn door, about the way it had hung straight and true after she'd fixed it, about the men clapping, about Cole's eyes when he'd said, "You did it." I will stay, she said, for now. Cole's face broke into a genuine smile. Good. That's good. They stood there in the starlight, two people who'd lost everything and were trying to build something from the ruins. And for the first time in a long time, Leon felt something she'd thought was dead. Hope. The first week after the door, Leon barely slept. Cole had meant what he said about the ranch falling apart. Every morning brought a new crisis. A fence section down in the north pasture, a wagon wheel cracked beyond repair, the bunkhouse roof leaking in 3 places. And every morning, Cole came to her with the same question. Can you fix it? Most of the time she could. Or at least she could try. The fence was simple enough. Replace the rotted posts, reinforce the crossbeams. She worked alongside Frank and 2 younger hands, teaching them how to notch the wood properly so it wouldn't split when they drove the nails. The wagon wheel was harder. The hub had cracked, and there was no replacing it without a lathe, which the ranch didn't have. So Leon improvised, wrapping it in wet rawhide that would shrink as it dried, creating compression tight enough to hold. It wouldn't last forever, but it would last the winter. The roof, though, that was when things got complicated. She was up on the bunkhouse in freezing wind, prying up damaged shingles when she heard the shouting from below. I don't care what Mercer said. It was Miller's voice, loud and angry. I'm not taking orders from some Chinaman's widow who doesn't know her ass from... Finish that sentence and I'll knock your teeth out. That was Frank, low and dangerous. Lynn set down her hammer, crawled to the edge of the roof, looked down. Miller and Frank were squared off in the yard, 5 or 6 other hands gathered around them in a loose circle. Miller's face was red, his fists clenched. She's got you all fooled, Miller spat. One lucky fix and suddenly she's running the whole damn operation? It's bullshit, Frank, and you know it. What I know, Frank said, is that she's fixed more in a week than you have all year. Because Mercer's got his eyes on her. Everyone can see it. The words hit like a slap. Leon felt her face burn, felt something ugly twist in her stomach. She should climb down, should confront this, but her body wouldn't move. Watch your mouth, Frank growled. Why? It's true, isn't it? Boss brings in some exotic little thing, gives her money, a place to stay, special treatment. Frank's fist caught Miller in the jaw before he could finish. The younger man went down hard, blood spraying from his split lip. He came up swinging, and suddenly they were grappling in the dirt, other hands shouting, some trying to pull them apart, others just watching. "Stop!" Leon shouted from the roof. "Stop this!" No one heard her. Or if they did, they didn't care. Then a gunshot cracked across the yard. Everyone froze. Cole stood on the porch of the main house, rifle pointed at the sky, his face carved from stone. "That's enough," he said quietly. Frank and Miller separated, both breathing hard. Miller's lip was bleeding badly. Frank's knuckles were split. Cole walked over, his boots crunching in the snow. When he spoke, his voice could have cut glass. "Frank, get to the barn and cool off. Miller, you're going to tell me exactly what the hell you think you're doing." "I'm saying what everyone's thinking," Miller said, wiping blood from his mouth. "That you're playing favorites, that she's getting special treatment because she's the best carpenter I've seen in 10 years, Cole interrupted. Because she works harder than half you lazy sons of bitches combined. Because she fixed a door that 3 professionals said was impossible." He stepped closer to Miller. "But if you've got a problem with that, if you think there's something improper going on, then say it plain. Right now." Miller's eyes darted to Leanne, still on the roof, then back to Cole. "I just think—" "Say it plain," Cole repeated, "or shut your mouth and get back to work." The silence stretched. Miller's jaw worked, but no words came. Finally, he looked away. "Thought so," Cole said. He turned to address the gathered men. "Mrs. Zhao is here because she's earned her place, same as any of you. If anyone has a problem with that, you can collect your pay and leave. But if you stay, you'll treat her with respect. That's not a request." He waited, letting the words sink in. No one moved. "Good. Now get back to work. All of you." The crowd dispersed, muttering. Frank headed to the barn, shaking out his hand. Miller slunk off toward the bunkhouse, still bleeding. Cole looked up at Leanne. "You all right?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Come down from there. We need to talk." In the main house, Cole poured coffee with hands that were steady but tight. Leanne sat at the table, her own hands wrapped around the warm cup, trying to stop shaking. "I'm sorry," Cole said finally. "That shouldn't have happened. It's not your fault." "It is. I should have seen it coming." He sat across from her, scrubbed a hand over his face. "Miller's young, stupid, thinks he knows everything. But the others, they're getting restless. Winter's hard, money's tight. They look for someone to blame." "They blame me," Leanne said. "Some of them. Not all." He met her eyes. "The ones who actually work with you, they know better. Frank would take a bullet for you at this point. Esteban thinks you walk on water. Even Tommy's coming around. But the others will fall in line or leave. That's how it works." Leanne sipped her coffee, tasted the bitterness. "What Miller said, about special treatment, about you and I, it's garbage. People will talk anyway. Let them." Cole's voice was firm. "I know the truth. You know the truth. That's what matters." But Leanne wasn't sure. In San Francisco, in the Chinese community, reputation was everything. A woman alone with a white man living on his property, working alongside him, it would have been scandalous. Here the rules were different, but the judgment felt the same. "Maybe I should go," she said quietly. "No." The word came out harder than Cole probably intended because he softened his tone immediately. "No, you're not leaving because some jackass can't keep his mouth shut. You've earned your place here, Leanne. Don't let anyone take that from you." She wanted to believe him, but belief was a luxury she couldn't quite afford. The next morning, Leanne woke to find a note slipped under her door. The handwriting was crude, barely legible. "Go home, chink." She stood there staring at it for a long time. Then she crumpled it up, threw it in the fire, and went to work. Frank noticed the change in her immediately. "You all right, ma'am?" "Fine," she said, not looking at him. "You don't look fine." "I said I'm fine." He didn't push, but she felt his eyes on her all morning as they worked on replacing a broken axle on the feed wagon. The work was mechanical, mindless. Leanne was grateful for it. She didn't want to think. By afternoon, though, thinking was unavoidable. Cole found her in the equipment shed, organizing tools that didn't need organizing. "Frank says you're off today," he said. "Frank talks too much." "He's worried. So am I." Cole leaned against the doorframe. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Leanne." She slammed a wrench down on the bench, the sound echoing in the small space. Someone left a note, told me to go home, called me a name. Cole's expression went dark. Who? I don't know. It doesn't matter. The hell it doesn't. What will you do? Fire everyone until you find out who did it? Interrogate them? Make it worse? She turned to face him. This is not new. People have always... Her English failed her, frustration choking the words. She switched to Cantonese, the sentences flowing easier. People have always looked at me and seen something wrong, something that doesn't belong. In China, I was too modern. In America, I'm too foreign. Here, I'm just wrong. Cole didn't speak Cantonese, but he seemed to understand the shape of the words, the weight behind them. You're not wrong, he said quietly. You can't know that. I know that everyone who's actually worked with you respects you. I know you've saved this ranch more in 2 weeks than most of these men have in 2 years. I know... He stopped, seemed to be choosing his words carefully. I know that I trust you more than I've trusted anyone in a long time. The words hung between them, meaning more than they should. Lien looked away. Trust is not enough. Not when... A shout from outside cut her off. Then another, urgent and afraid. Cole was out the door before the second shout faded. Lien followed, her heart hammering. In the yard, men were running toward the north pasture. Lien could see smoke, black and thick, rising fast. Fire! Someone yelled. Fire in the hay barn! The hay barn was a quarter-mile from the main buildings, but the wind was blowing hard from the north. If it reached the other structures, the whole ranch could go up. Cole was already running, shouting orders. Get buckets! Form a line from the creek! Move! Lynn ran too, her feet slipping in the snow. By the time she reached the hay barn, flames were eating through the roof, the heat so intense she had to shield her face. Men were hauling buckets of water from the half-frozen creek, throwing them on the fire, but it was like pissing on a wildfire. It's too far gone, Frank shouted over the roar. We need to let it burn. Focus on stopping the spread. No! Cole's face was lit by the flames, desperate. That's our winter feed. We lose that. We lose half the herd. We're going to lose more than that if this fire jumps. Lien scanned the scene, her mind racing. The barn was lost. Frank was right. But there were smaller outbuildings downwind, a tool shed, a chicken coop, a storage building full of equipment they couldn't replace. Those could still be saved. We need fire break, she shouted. Cole turned to her. What? Fire break. Clear the ground between barn and other buildings. No fuel. Fire cannot spread. For a split second, he just stared at her. Then understanding lit his face. She's right. Everyone get shovels, axes, anything. Clear everything between the barn and the shed. Strip it down to dirt. The men moved, some reluctant, some energized by having a plan. Lien grabbed a shovel and started digging, throwing snow and frozen grass aside, trying to expose the bare ground underneath. It was brutal work, the smoke choking her, the heat blistering even at a distance. Miller appeared beside her, his face smudged with soot. This is crazy. It will work, Lien gasped. How do you know? I don't, but doing nothing is worse. He stared at her for a moment, then started digging too. They worked in a line, 20 men tearing up the ground, creating a strip of bare earth 10 feet wide. The hay barn collapsed behind them with a sound like thunder, sending up a shower of sparks that made everyone flinch. But the fire break held. The sparks landed on bare dirt and died. An hour later, the hay barn was nothing but smoldering ruins, but everything else was intact. Cole stood in front of the wreckage, his face black with soot, his eyes red. How much did we lose? Frank did the math in his head. Maybe a third of the winter feed. We can make it if we're careful, ration the cattle. And if we can't? Then we sell off part of the herd early. Take a loss. Cole's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Do it. As the men drifted away, exhausted and coughing, Lien stayed behind. She walked closer to the ruins, felt the heat still radiating from the collapsed timbers. Something about it nagged at her. What are you looking for? Cole asked, appearing at her shoulder. How did fire start? Could be anything. Lantern, spontaneous combustion from wet hay. No. Lien crouched down, pointed to a section near what had been the door. Look, wood is burned different here, faster, like someone used... She didn't know the English word. Liquid that burns? Accelerant? Cole's voice went cold. You're saying this was deliberate? I don't know. Maybe. She stood, met his eyes. Or maybe I am wrong. Maybe I see things that are not there because I am paranoid. Cole stared at the ruins for a long time. Then he said, "Tomorrow, we're going to need to survey the damage, figure out what we can salvage. I want you there." "Why me?" "Because you see things other people miss." He turned to her. "And because I need someone I can trust." That night, Leon couldn't sleep. She kept seeing the fire, kept smelling the smoke, and she kept thinking about the note under her door, about Miller's accusations, about the way some of the men looked at her. Around midnight, she gave up, pulled on her coat, and walked outside. The night was bitter cold, the stars hidden behind clouds. She walked to the ruins of the hay barn, stood staring at the blackened timbers. In the darkness, she could still see the glow of embers deep in the wreckage. Can't sleep either? She jumped, spun. Cole emerged from the shadows, a rifle slung over his shoulder. "You scared me," she said. "Sorry." He came to stand beside her. "Been doing rounds, making sure nothing else decides to catch fire." "You think someone said it?" "I think it's possible." He was quiet for a moment. "You made enemies, Leon. Not because you did anything wrong, just because you're good at what you do, and that makes some people feel small." "So what do I do?" "You keep being good at what you do. You don't let them win." He looked at her. "And you let me handle the rest. I don't need protecting. I know, but you're getting it anyway." There was something in his voice, something rough and honest, that made Leon's chest tighten. She'd heard that tone before from her husband, in the early days when he'd still believed he could fight the sickness. "Cole," she said carefully, "what Miller said about you and I, about special treatment. I told you people will keep saying it, keep thinking it, unless we are very careful." She turned to face him. "I do not want to cause you trouble." Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "My wife used to say that trouble finds you whether you look for it or not. Best you can do is decide if it's worth it." "And is this worth it?" He met her eyes, and in the darkness, his expression was unreadable. "Yeah, it is." They stood there in the cold, two people on the edge of something neither of them could quite name. Then Cole shifted his rifle. "Come on. You need sleep, and I need to finish rounds." They walked back together, their footsteps crunching in the snow, the burned smell following them all the way. The next week brought its own challenges. With the hay barn gone, they had to redistribute the remaining feed, which meant reorganizing storage, repairing old buildings to make them usable again. Leon found herself working from dawn until well past dark, her hands raw and aching, her back screaming. But she also found herself falling into a rhythm with the ranch, with the men, with the work. Frank became something like a friend, teaching her the names of tools she didn't know, covering for her when her English failed. Esteban brought her coffee in the mornings, hot and sweet the way she liked it. Even Tommy started asking her questions, shy but genuine, about how she learned carpentry, about China, about her husband. Miller kept his distance, which was fine by her. And Cole was everywhere and nowhere. He'd appear when she was struggling with something heavy, lend his strength without being asked. He'd check on her work, not because he doubted her, but because he cared about the details the same way she did. Sometimes they'd work side by side in silence, comfortable in a way that didn't require words. Other times, she'd catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. It was during one of these moments, Leon up on a ladder, Cole holding it steady below, that Frank approached. "Boss, we got a visitor." Cole's attention snapped to the road. A wagon was approaching, pulled by two horses that looked too fine for ranch work. The man driving wore a suit that probably cost more than most of the hands made in a month. "Shit," Cole muttered. "Who is it?" Leon asked, climbing down. "Marcus Brennan, merchant from town. Comes out here twice a year trying to buy me out." Cole's expression was flat. "This should be fun." Brennan pulled up to the main house, climbed down with the careful movements of someone who wasn't used to physical labor. He was in his 50s, well-fed, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mercer!" he called out, too loud, too friendly. "Good to see you, though I have to say, heard about the fire. Terrible business." "News travels fast," Cole said. "It does in a small town." Brennan's eyes found Leon, lingered just a bit too long. "And who's this lovely creature?" "Mrs. Zhao," My carpenter. Your carpenter? Brennan's smile widened. Well, that's certainly progressive of you, Cole. Didn't take you for the type to hire diversely. The way he said it made Leon's skin crawl. Cole's voice went cold. What do you want, Marcus? Straight to business. I like that. Brennan pulled out a cigar, lit it. I heard about your hay barn. Heard you lost a significant portion of your winter stores. That's going to make things difficult, especially with beef prices down. So I thought I'd come out here, make you a friendly offer. I'm not selling. Hear me out. $50,000 for the property, livestock included. That's more than fair, especially given your current situation. I said I'm not selling. Cole, be reasonable. This ranch is bleeding money. You know it. I know it. Winter's not even half over and you're already struggling. How long can you keep this up? As long as it takes. Brennan's smile never wavered, but something mean flickered in his eyes. Pride's a luxury, my friend. One you can't afford. His gaze slid to Leon again. Though I suppose you've been making certain investments lately. The insinuation was clear. Leon felt her face burn, felt anger rising like bile. Cole took a step forward. You got 3 seconds to get back in that wagon before I throw you in it. I'm just saying, Brennan continued, taking a step back but still smiling, that decisions made from, let's call it loneliness, aren't always sound business decisions. 1. Think about my offer, Cole. I'll be generous. More generous than the bank will be when you can't make your next payment. 2. Brennan climbed into his wagon, unhurried, still smiling. Give it some thought. I'll be around. He tipped his hat to Leon. Ma'am, a pleasure. He drove off, leaving Cole standing in the yard, fists clenched, jaw tight. I hate that man, Frank said, appearing from the barn. You and me both, Cole muttered. Then he seemed to remember Leon was there, turned to her. I'm sorry about... It's fine, she said, though it wasn't. No, it's not. He had no right to... He's trying to make you angry, make you sell. Do not let him win. Cole stared at her for a moment, then some of the tension left his shoulders. You're right, he's not worth it. But his eyes followed the wagon until it disappeared down the road. That night at dinner, the conversation was subdued. The men had heard about Brennan's visit, and the implications hung over the table like smoke. Boss, one of the older hands said finally, is it true about the bank? Cole set down his fork. We're behind on payments, not much, but enough that they're getting nervous. How behind? 3 months. Silence. That was worse than anyone had thought. Can we make it up? Frank asked. Maybe, if we have a good spring, if beef prices recover, if we don't have any more disasters. Cole's voice was steady, but Leon could hear the strain underneath. We'll make it work. We always do. But the doubt in the room was thick enough to choke on. After dinner, Leon found Cole in the barn, checking on the horses. He was brushing down his stallion, the repetitive motion almost meditative. You lied to them, she said. Cole didn't stop brushing. I gave them hope. Hope built on lies is not real hope. Maybe not, but it's better than despair. He set down the brush, leaned against the stall. I can't afford to lose any more hands. If they think the ranch is going under, they'll leave, find work somewhere stable. I can't blame them, but I can't afford it either. Leon stepped closer. How bad is it? Really? Cole was quiet for a long time. Then, if we don't make the spring payment, the bank will foreclose. We'll lose everything. And Brennan knows this. Of course he does. Probably paid someone at the bank to tip him off. Cole's laugh was bitter. He'll wait until we're desperate, then swoop in and buy the place for half what it's worth. So we don't let that happen. Easier said than done. Leon thought for a moment, turning the problem over in her mind the way she would a piece of warped wood. The cattle. You said we need to sell some early. Yeah, but prices are down. We'll take a loss. What if we sell them different? Not to normal buyer. Cole frowned. What do you mean? In San Francisco, my husband, he sell furniture to rich people. Not through store, direct. He charge more, but they pay because they want special, custom. She struggled to find the words. What if you sell cattle same way? Find buyer who wants special, who will pay more. You mean bypass the auction houses, sell direct to restaurants or private buyers? Yes, exactly. Cole was quiet, thinking. That could work. But I don't have those connections. Don't know anyone in that market. Then we find them. We make them. He looked at her, and something like hope, real hope, not the false kind he'd given the men, lit his eyes. You know, you're starting to sound like a businesswoman. My husband taught me. He always say, if system does not work for you, make new system. Cole smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him in days. Your husband was a smart man. Yes, Leanne said softly. He was. They stood there in the quiet barn, the horses shifting in their stalls, and for a moment the weight of everything, the debt, the fire, the uncertainty, didn't seem quite so crushing. All right, Cole said finally. Let's try it. Tomorrow we start making a list of potential buyers. Restaurants in Denver, private buyers in Cheyenne. We'll send letters, make contacts. He held out his hand. Partners? Leanne looked at his hand, then up at his face. This was more than just fixing doors or barn roofs. This was something bigger, something that tied her to this place, to these people, to him. She took his hand. Partners. His grip was warm, calloused, strong, and when he let go, she could still feel the ghost of it against her skin. Over the next 2 weeks, they worked on the plan. Leanne helped Cole draft letters, her neat handwriting better than his rough scrawl. They compiled lists of potential buyers, researched prices, figured out logistics. And slowly, responses started coming back. A restaurant in Denver was interested. A hotel in Cheyenne wanted to discuss. A private buyer in Salt Lake City asked for samples. It wasn't salvation, not yet, but it was something. And in the midst of all this, Lion kept working. She repaired the chicken coop after a windstorm tore off half the roof. She fixed a broken pump that had been sitting useless for months. She taught Tommy how to properly sharpen a saw blade, showed him the angle, the pressure, the patience required. The men stopped watching her with suspicion and started watching her with something else. Respect, maybe? Or at least acceptance. Even Miller came around, eventually. He approached her one morning, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable. Ma'am, he said, I wanted to apologize for what I said about you and the boss. Leanne set down the plane she'd been using. Okay, I was out of line. Frank was right to punch me. He shifted his weight. Truth is, I was jealous. You came in here, proved yourself in a week when I've been busting my ass for 2 years and still can't get the boss to trust me with anything important. Maybe because you spend more time complaining than working, Leanne said. Miller blinked, then laughed. Yeah, that's probably fair. He held out his hand. Can we start over? She looked at his hand for a moment, then shook it. Okay, start over. From that day on, Miller was different. Not perfect. He still had a mouth on him, still thought he knew more than he did. But he was trying, and that was enough. Spring came slowly, reluctantly, like it wasn't sure it wanted to arrive. The snow melted in patches, revealing mud and dead grass underneath. The cattle grew restless, ready for fresh grazing, and the calendar crept closer to the day when the bank payment was due. Cole was stressed, though he tried to hide it. Leanne could see it in the way he held his shoulders, the way he stared at the ledgers late at night when he thought no one was watching. They'd made some sales, the Denver restaurant had bought 10 head, the Cheyenne hotel had taken 8, but it wasn't enough. They were still short, and time was running out. It was Frank who brought the news, bursting into the barn where Leanne was working on replacing a cracked beam. Brennan's back, he said, breathing hard. Leanne's stomach dropped. Where? Main house. With the boss. And he brought someone from the bank. She dropped her tools, ran. In Cole's office, Brennan sat in the good chair, that same oil-slick smile on his face. Next to him was a thin man in a banker's suit, holding a ledger. Cole stood behind his desk, his face carved from granite. Ah, Mrs. Zhao, Brennan said as Leanne entered. Perfect timing. We were just discussing your employer's financial situation. Get out, Cole said, his voice low. Now, Mr. Patterson here has come all the way from town to review your accounts. The least you can do is hear him out. The banker, Patterson, cleared his throat. Mr. Mercer, according to our records, you're currently 4 months behind on your mortgage payments. That's a total of $800 in arrears, plus interest. I'm aware, Cole said. The bank has been patient, but we can't extend indefinitely. If payment isn't made by the end of the month, We'll have no choice but to begin foreclosure proceedings. End of month? Cole's eyes narrowed. Last I checked, I had until May 1st. The terms have been revised. Patterson wouldn't meet his eyes. On whose authority? Brennan leaned back in his chair. The bank's board voted on it last week. They're concerned about the risk, what with the fire and all. Can't blame them, really. It clicked into place. Brennan had pushed this, had probably bribed someone on the board to move up the deadline, to tighten the noose. You son of a bitch, Cole said. Careful, Brennan said, still smiling. But don't worry, I'm prepared to make you an offer, $45,000 for everything. That'll clear your debt and leave you with a little to start over somewhere else. 45? Cole's voice was dangerous. You said 50 last time. That was before the deadline got moved up. Market forces, you understand. Leon stepped forward. How much is ranch worth? Real value? Patterson glanced at her, surprised. Well, with the land, buildings, livestock, conservatively, around 70,000. So you offer is... She did the math in her head, her English faltering. Not even 2/3 of value. The market's what people will pay, Brennan said. And right now, I'm the only one buying. No, Leon said. You are not. Everyone turned to look at her. Explain, Cole said. Leon's heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. I know someone. In San Francisco. Man who buy my husband's workshop after he die. Rich man. He collect things. Art, furniture, land. She looked at Cole. I can write to him. Tell him about ranch. About opportunity. And you think he'd be interested? Cole's voice was carefully neutral. Maybe. He always say he want investment in West. Want to... She struggled for the word. Diversify. Brennan laughed. This is ridiculous. You expect us to believe some Chinaman in San Francisco is going to ride to your rescue? Leon turned to him, and the look in her eyes made his smile falter. His name is Mr. Chen. He owns 3 restaurants, 2 hotels, and shipping company. He is worth more than you will ever see, and he trusts me because I am honest, because I work hard, because I do not cheat. The room went silent. Patterson cleared his throat. Well, if there's a legitimate buyer interested, the bank would of course consider... No, Brennan snapped, then catching himself. I mean, we can't wait for some phantom buyer who may or may not exist. The bank needs assurances now. Cole looked at Lyon. Can you really do this? I can try. He studied her face for a long moment. Then he turned to Patterson. Give me 2 weeks. I'll get you the money, one way or another. Mr. Mercer, 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking. Patterson glanced at Brennan, who was fuming. I suppose I could present that to the board. You do that? Cole's voice was iron. Now get out, both of you. Brennan stood slowly, his face dark. You're making a mistake, Cole. Wouldn't be my first. After they left, Cole sank into his chair, ran his hands through his hair. Please tell me you weren't bluffing. I don't know what this word means. Bluffing. Lying. Making it up. Oh. Leon shook her head. No, Mr. Chen is real, but I don't know if he will help. We did not part on good terms. He offered me job after husband die. I refuse. He was angry. Why'd you refuse? Because he want me to be more than worker. She met Cole's eyes. I say no. Understanding dawned on Cole's face. I see. He was quiet for a moment. And you think he'll help anyway? I don't know, but I have to try. Cole nodded slowly. Then he stood, walked around the desk, and put his hands on her shoulders. Thank you for this, for everything. The touch was warm, grounding. Leon felt something shift in her chest, something she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. We are partners, she said. Remember? He smiled. Yeah, partners. But the way he looked at her suggested something more complicated than business. That night, Leon sat at the small desk in her room and wrote the hardest letter of her life. She apologized to Mr. Chen for refusing his offer, explained her situation, described the ranch and its potential. She didn't beg, didn't plead, just laid out the facts and asked if he might be interested. It took 3 drafts before she was satisfied. Then she sealed it, addressed it, and the next morning she gave it to Frank to post in town. "Think it'll work?" Frank asked. "I hope so," Leanne said. "And if it doesn't?" She didn't have an answer for that. The waiting was agony. Days crawled by like wounded animals. Leanne threw herself into work, trying not to think about the calendar, about the deadline looming over them. She repaired, she built, she fixed. Anything to keep her hands busy and her mind quiet. Cole was the same. She'd find him in the barn at midnight, working on tack that didn't need fixing, or in the office, going over the books for the 100th time, looking for money that wasn't there. They didn't talk about the letter, didn't talk about what would happen if it failed. But sometimes, late at night, Leanne would look out her window and see Cole standing in the yard staring at the horizon, and she knew he was thinking the same thing she was. This ranch, this life they'd started to build together, it all hung by a thread, and that thread was a letter traveling west, carrying hope that felt both fragile and impossible. All they could do was wait and work and hope it would be enough. 10 days passed with no response. The calendar squares crossed off one by one, each mark bringing them closer to the edge. Leanne stopped sleeping well. She'd lie awake listening to the wind, wondering if she'd made everything worse. Maybe Mr. Chen had thrown her letter in the fire. Maybe he'd laughed at her desperation. Maybe the letter had never even arrived. On the 11th day, a storm rolled in from the north. It started as a gray smudge on the horizon, barely visible through the morning haze. By noon, the temperature had dropped 20 degrees and the wind was screaming across the plains, hard enough to make the building shake. Frank ordered everyone to secure the livestock, tie down anything that could blow away, and get inside. "Big one coming," he told Leanne as they worked to shutter the barn windows. "Can feel it in my bones." He was right. By evening, the snow was falling so thick you couldn't see 10 feet in any direction. The wind howled like something alive and hungry, battering the walls, finding every crack and gap. Leanne huddled in her room with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, listening to the house groan under the assault. Around midnight, someone pounded on her door like, "Leanne!" Cole's voice urgent. "Get dressed, we have a problem." She threw on her clothes, her fingers clumsy with cold and sleep. When she opened the door, Cole stood there with a lantern, his face grim. "The windmill," he said. "Something's wrong with it." They ran through the storm to the equipment barn where the other men were gathering. Through the windows, Leanne could see the windmill, a tall wooden structure that pumped water from the well to the livestock troughs. It was spinning, fast, too fast. "The brake mechanism failed," Frank shouted over the wind. "If we don't stop it, the whole thing's going to tear itself apart." "Can we reach it?" Cole asked. "In this?" Frank shook his head. "We'd be lucky to make it halfway without freezing to death." But even as he spoke, they could hear the windmill's shriek rising in pitch, the wooden blades spinning faster and faster. Metal groaned. Something cracked. "If it goes," one of the hands said, "we lose the well pump, no water for the cattle. And no way to replace it before spring," another added. "We'd have to haul water by hand every day for 300 head. The math was brutal. They'd lose half the herd, maybe more, and with it, any chance of making the payment. Cole stared out at the spinning windmill, his jaw tight. "I'll go. Try to engage the emergency brake." "You'll die out there," Frank said flatly. "Maybe. But if I don't try, we're finished anyway." "Boss." Cole was already pulling on his heavy coat, wrapping a scarf around his face. "Get a rope. Tie it around my waist. If I go down, you can pull me back." The men moved to obey, but Leanne grabbed Cole's arm. "Wait, this is stupid." "It's necessary." "No, it's suicide." Her mind was racing, seeing the problem the way she would a piece of broken furniture. "The brake is mechanical, yes? Lever and friction pad?" "Yeah, but... So we don't need person to reach it. We need force. Weight. Something to pull the lever." Cole frowned. "What are you thinking?" Leanne turned to Frank. "We have rope, strong rope. In the barn, 1/4-inch hemp, couple 100 feet. And grappling hook, or something with weight that can catch?" Understanding dawned on Frank's face. The old anchor, from when they tried to dig the irrigation ditch. "Get it," Leanne said. "And the rope, all of it." They worked fast, carrying the equipment to the doorway closest to the windmill. The anchor was a brutal piece of iron, 40 pounds at least, with 3 curved hooks. Frank tied it to the rope with knots that would hold against anything. "Here's the plan," Leanne said, her voice raised over the storm. "We throw anchor, try to catch on windmill frame. If it holds, we use rope to pull brake lever from here safe. No one goes outside." "That's a hell of a throw," Miller said, peering out at the windmill. 50 feet, easy, in this wind. "You have better idea?" He didn't. Cole took the anchor, tested its weight. "Who's the best shot here?" "Tommy," Frank said immediately. "Kid can hit a fence post from 100 yards. Tommy stepped forward, looking nervous. "I don't know, boss. I never—" "You can do this," Cole said, pressing the anchor into his hands. "Just like throwing a rope over a high branch. You've done it 1,000 times. Not in a goddamn blizzard. Then this'll be your first." Cole gripped the kid's shoulder. "We need you, Tommy." The young man swallowed hard, then nodded. They opened the door. The wind hit like a fist, driving snow into their faces, stealing the air from their lungs. The windmill was a dark shape in the white chaos, spinning so fast the blades were just a blur. Tommy stepped into the doorway, the anchor in his right hand, the rope coiled in his left. He was shaking. From cold or fear, Leon couldn't tell. "Wait for the wind to drop," Frank coached. "Even just a second, then let it fly." They waited. The wind screamed. The windmill shrieked. Any moment, Leon expected to hear the crack of breaking wood, see the whole structure collapse. Then, for just a heartbeat, the wind died. Tommy threw. The anchor flew through the air, rope trailing behind it like a tail. For a moment, it looked perfect. The arc right, the trajectory true. Then a gust caught it, pushed it left. The anchor sailed past the windmill and disappeared into the snow. "Damn it!" Tommy hauled the rope back in, his face stricken. "I'm sorry, Again, Cole said. "You're good. Just adjust for the wind." They waited for another lull. When it came, Tommy threw again. This time the anchor hit the windmill's frame with a clang, but didn't catch. It bounced off and fell. "Third time," Leon said quietly. "You can do this." Tommy's hands were shaking as he pulled the rope back in. The windmill's scream was getting worse, more desperate. Something inside was breaking. "Now or never, kid," Frank muttered. The wind dropped. Tommy threw. The anchor flew true, straight and hard. It hit the framework. And this time, the hooks caught. The rope went taut. A cheer went up from the men. "Got it," Tommy yelled. "I got it." "Wham bam." Tommy, "Now pull." Cole grabbed the rope, started hauling. Frank joined him, then Leanne, then Tommy, then all of them. 8 people on the rope, pulling with everything they had. The rope stretched, groaned. Through the doorway, they could see the brake lever on the windmill starting to move. Slowly, inch by inch. "More!" Cole shouted. "Pull harder!" Leon's hands were screaming, the rough hemp tearing at her palms, even through her gloves. Her shoulders burned. Her back felt like it might snap. But she pulled. The lever moved another inch. Another. Then it locked into place. The brake engaged with a metallic screech. The spinning blades lurched, slowed. The shrieking stopped. The windmill shuddered once, twice, then went still. For a moment, no one moved. They just stood there, breathing hard, the rope still clutched in their hands. Then Frank started laughing. "Holy shit, we did it!" "We did it," Tommy repeated, like he couldn't quite believe it. Cole turned to Leon, and the look on his face, relief, admiration, something deeper, made her chest tight. "Your plan worked." "Yes," she said. Then, because her legs suddenly felt weak, she sat down hard on the floor. Cole sat beside her. They were both soaked with snow, shaking from exertion and cold. Around them, the men were celebrating, slapping each other on the back, passing a flask someone had produced. "That was the craziest thing I've ever seen," Cole said quietly. "It was the only thing that would work." "Most people wouldn't have thought of it," Leon shrugged. "Most people are not trying to think like Broken Door." He laughed at that, a real laugh that warmed something inside her. "Is that what you do? Think like wood?" "Sometimes. When I need to understand how things break, how they can be fixed." She looked at him. "People are same, I think. They break in ways that make sense. If you understand the break, you can fix it." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "And what if some things are too broken to fix?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning that went beyond windmills and barn doors. "Then you build something new," Leon said, "from the pieces that are left." His hand found hers in the dark, squeezed once, then let go. It was quick, almost invisible, but Leon felt it like a brand. The storm blew itself out by morning, leaving the world buried in 2 feet of fresh snow. The men spent the day digging out, checking on the cattle, assessing damage. The windmill was battered but intact. They'd saved it, barely. But the brake mechanism was destroyed. Cole and Frank spent hours examining it, trying to figure out how to jury-rig a replacement. Leon was helping them when she saw the rider coming up the road. At first, it was just a dark spot moving across the white landscape. Then it resolved into a man on horseback, leading a pack mule. As he got closer, Leon's breath caught. The rider was Chinese. Young, maybe 30, dressed in a heavy coat and a wide-brimmed hat. But it was the mule that made her heart jump. It was loaded with wooden crates marked with familiar characters. The rider stopped at the main house, dismounted. Up close, Leon could see his face was weathered from travel, his eyes sharp and assessing. "I'm looking for Mrs. Zhao," he said in Cantonese. Leon stepped forward. "I am Mrs. Zhao." His face broke into a smile. "Ah, Mr. Chen sends his regards. And his investment." She stared. "What?" The rider, he introduced himself as Liu, Mr. Chen's agent, pulled a letter from his coat and handed it to her. Lian's hand shook as she opened it, read the neat characters inside. "Mrs. Zhao," the letter began, "I was pleased to receive your correspondence and even more pleased to learn that you have found meaningful work in Montana. I apologize for my behavior when last we met. You were right to refuse my offer. It was inappropriate, and I have regretted it since. As for your current situation, I am very interested in the ranch you describe. I am prepared to offer a loan of $15,000 at 5% interest to be repaid over 5 years. In exchange, I request a 10% stake in the ranch's profits. I believe this is fair, but I'm open to negotiation. My agent, Mr. Liu, will remain to oversee the investment and ensure the funds are used appropriately. I trust you and Mr. Mercer to do good work. Respectfully, Chen Wei-ming. Lin read it twice, then a third time, her vision blurring. $15,000. More than enough to cover the bank payment and have plenty left over for repairs, feed, everything they needed. "What does it say?" Cole asked, appearing at her shoulder. She handed him the letter. He couldn't read the characters, but she translated, her voice shaking. When she finished, Cole just stood there, silent. Then he sat down on the porch steps, put his head in his hands, and made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "We're saved," he said. "We're actually saved." The celebration that night was loud and chaotic. Someone broke out the good whiskey. Someone else produced a fiddle. The men sang off-key songs and told stories and laughed in that particular way that comes when disaster has been narrowly avoided. Lian sat at the edge of it all, watching. Liu was there too, quiet and observant, taking in the ranch with the careful eye of someone evaluating an investment. He spoke little English, so Lian translated for him when needed, explaining the layout, the operations, the plans. "Mr. Chen chose well," Liu said at one point. "This is good land, good operation. With proper management, it will be very profitable." "Thank you," Lian said. "And you? You are happy here?" It was a simple question, but it made Lian pause. Was she happy? She thought about the barn door, the windmill, the endless work. She thought about the cold, the isolation, the suspicion she'd faced. But she also thought about the moment the door had closed perfectly, about Cole's hand in the dark, about the way the men looked at her now, not as an outsider, but as one of them. "Yes," she said. "I think I am." Liu smiled. "Good. Mr. Chen will be pleased to hear it." Across the room, Cole caught her eye, raised his glass to her. She raised hers back. The next morning, Cole and Liu rode to town together to deal with the bank. Leanne stayed behind, working on the windmill brake with Frank and Tommy. They were trying to fabricate a new friction pad from materials they had on hand, leather, metal strapping, anything that might work. It was slow, frustrating work. The original mechanism had been designed by someone who actually knew what they were doing, and reverse engineering it from the broken pieces was like trying to read a book with half the pages torn out. "This is impossible," Tommy said, throwing down his tools. "We need to order a new one from Denver." "That will take weeks," Frank said, "and cost money we shouldn't spend." "So what, we just make do with this piece of shit?" Watch your mouth, Frank growled. They were still arguing when Leon heard hoofbeats. But it wasn't Cole and Liu returning. These horses were coming from the south. She walked out of the barn and felt her stomach drop. Marcus Brennan. And he wasn't alone. 3 other men rode with him, hard-looking types with guns on their hips. Mrs. Zhao, Brennan called out, too cheerful. Lovely day, isn't it? Mr. Mercer is not here, Leon said. Oh, I know. Saw him heading into town this morning. Brennan dismounted, handed his reins to one of his men. Actually, I was hoping to speak with you. About what? About your little rescue plan. See, word travels fast in a small town. I heard Cole got himself a Chinese investor. Very clever. He walked closer, and Leon forced herself not to step back. But here's the thing. I did some checking. Turns out this Mr. Chen of yours is involved in some questionable business. Gambling houses, opium dens. Some say he's part of the Tongs. That is lie, Leon said. Is it? Because the way I hear it, San Francisco's Chinatown is run by criminals, and your Mr. Chen is one of them. You know nothing about... I know enough, Brennan cut her off. And I know that when the good people of this town hear that Cole Mercer is taking money from Chinese gangsters, they're not going to be happy. Might even hurt his business. Hard to sell cattle when folks think you're in bed with criminals. The threat was clear. Brennan would spread rumors, poison the well, make it impossible for Cole to operate even if they saved the ranch. Why are you doing this? Leon asked. Because I want that land, and I'm not going to let some uppity Chinaman's widow stand in my way. He leaned in close enough that she could smell the tobacco on his breath. You're going to go to Mr. Mercer, and you're going to tell him to refuse Chen's money. Tell him it's dirty, that it'll ruin him. Convince him to take my offer instead. No. Brennan's expression hardened. You sure about that? One of his men shifted, his hand moving to his gun. It was subtle, but the message was clear. Behind Leon, she heard movement. Frank and Tommy had come out of the barn. So had Miller and Esteban and half a dozen other hands, all carrying tools that could double as weapons. I think you should leave, Frank said quietly. Brennan looked at the assembled men, calculated the odds, and apparently decided discretion was smarter. Fine. But think about what I said, Mrs. Zhao. Think real hard. He mounted up, and his men followed. They rode out slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone knew they weren't afraid. When they were gone, Frank turned to Leon. You all right? Yes, she lied. That man's going to be a problem. I know. That night, when Cole and Leo returned, triumphant, the bank payment made, the debt cleared, Leon pulled Cole aside and told him about Brennan's visit. His face went dark. He threatened you? Not directly, but yes. Son of a bitch. I'll ride out there right now. Tell him... No. Leon put a hand on his arm. That is what he wants. He wants you angry, wants you to do something stupid that makes him look like victim. So what do? We be smarter. We make Ranch so successful that his lies don't matter. We prove that Mr. Chen's money is good, that we are good. She met his eyes. We win by not losing. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, we do it your way. But if he comes back here, if he threatens you again, then we deal with it together, Leon finished. Partners, remember? A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. Yeah, partners. But that night, Leanne lay awake for hours, listening to the wind and thinking about Brennan's words. She knew men like him, men who saw the world as something to be owned, controlled, men who didn't care who they destroyed in the process. And she knew that this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next few weeks were tense. Brennan didn't come back to the ranch, but his presence was felt everywhere. In town, people started whispering. Some of the merchants got colder when Cole came in. A few of the buyers they'd contacted suddenly went quiet, stopped returning letters. It's Brennan, Frank said one night over dinner. He's spreading poison. Can we prove it? Cole asked. No, but everyone knows it. Cole's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Leon watched him push food around his plate, saw the worry etched into his face. They'd won the battle with the bank, but they were losing the war for the town's goodwill. It was Liu who suggested the solution. In China, he said one evening, speaking through Leon's translation, when businessman faces rumors, he does not hide. He invites people to see truth for themselves, throws feast, Shows his operation, proves rumors are lies. You mean like an open house? Frank said. What is open house? Invite folks out to the ranch, show them around, feed them, let them see we're not doing anything wrong, Cole said slowly. The idea was taking shape in his mind. Yeah, that could work. It could also backfire, Leon pointed out. What if people refuse to come? Or come just to cause trouble? Then we deal with it. But Liu's right. Hiding makes us look guilty. If we've got nothing to hide, we show them that. The decision was made. They would host a spring gathering, invite everyone in town, show them the ranch, the operation, the honest work being done. Prove that Chen's money was legitimate, that Leon wasn't some criminal, that Cole was still the man they'd always known. Planning the event consumed the next 2 weeks. They cleaned every building until it shone. They organized tours, prepared demonstrations of their new cattle breeding program, planned a feast that would feed 100 people. Leon worked herself to exhaustion, painting, repairing, making everything perfect. You need to rest, Cole told her one night, finding her in the barn after midnight, still working. I need to make this right, she said. It's already right. The ranch looks amazing. The ranch, yes, but She set down her brush, faced him. Cole, if this fails, if people don't come, or if they come and still believe Brennan's lies, it is my fault. I brought this trouble here. My letter, my connection to Mr. Chen. Your letter saved us, Cole interrupted. Your connection gave us a future. Without you, this ranch would be owned by Brennan right now, and I'd be... Hell, I don't know where I'd be, but not here, not home. He stepped closer. So stop taking blame for other people's hatred. You didn't create it. You don't deserve it. And you sure as hell don't have to fix it alone. The words hit her like a wave, warm and unexpected. She felt tears prick her eyes, fought them back. I just want to belong somewhere, she whispered. I am so tired of being the wrong person in the wrong place. You're not wrong, Cole said, his voice rough. You're right here, right where you should be. He reached out, tucked a stray hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, intimate. Lion's breath caught. For a moment they stood there, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body, see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. Her heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. Then Cole stepped back, cleared his throat. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. He left quickly, and Leon stood alone in the barn, her face burning, her thoughts a tangle she couldn't sort. The day of the gathering dawned clear and bright, the sky a brilliant blue that seemed almost too perfect. People started arriving around noon, wagons and horses, families and individuals, curious and skeptical in equal measure. Some came because they genuinely wanted to see the ranch. Others came because they'd known Cole for years and wanted to support him. And some, Leon suspected, came just to see if the rumors were true, to judge for themselves whether there was something scandalous happening. Cole greeted everyone personally, shaking hands, introducing Liu, explaining the investment in simple, honest terms. Mr. Chen saw an opportunity to support a good operation, he said. No different than any bank loan, except with better terms. Some people nodded, accepting. Others looked unconvinced. Leon kept herself busy, giving tours of the workshop, demonstrating repairs she'd made, answering questions about her techniques. Most people were polite. A few were genuinely interested, but there were looks, sideways glances, whispered comments she couldn't quite hear. It was during the demonstration of the barn door that things went wrong. She was showing a group how the door operated, explaining the repair work, when a voice from the back called out, "And how much did that fancy work cost? Seems like an awful lot of trouble for one door." It was one of Brennan's friends, a rancher named Hayes. Lion recognized him from town. "The door was important," Leon said carefully. "It has history, value beyond just function. That's a waste of money in my book. Any competent carpenter would have just built new." "Perhaps," Leon said. "But sometimes, keeping what matters is worth extra work." "Or maybe you just wanted an excuse to stay," Hayes said, smiling in a way that made Leon's skin crawl. "Make yourself indispensable." The crowd went quiet. Leon felt her face heat, felt the judgment pressing in from all sides. Before she could respond, Cole appeared. "That's enough, Hayes. I'm just asking questions, Mercer." "No, you're being an asshole. There's a difference." Cole's voice was hard. "Leon's work has saved this ranch more times than I can count. She's earned her place here 10 times over. If you can't respect that, you can leave. Hayes held his gaze for a moment, then shrugged. Just calling it like I see it. Then you need your eyes checked. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Leon wanted to disappear, to run, to be anywhere but here with all these eyes on her. Then Frank stepped forward. You know what? I've worked ranches for 30 years, all over Montana and Wyoming, and I've never seen anyone with Mrs. Zhao's skill. Not just with wood, with problem solving, with seeing what needs to be done and getting it done. She's got more grit than half the men I've worked with, and she doesn't complain half as much either. That's the truth, Tommy added, stepping up beside Frank. Ma'am fixed that windmill break when none of us could figure it out. Saved our whole operation. And she works harder than anyone here, Miller said, appearing from the crowd. Including me. I was wrong about her, and I'll say it in front of everyone. Mrs. Zhao belongs here. One by one, the ranch hands stepped forward, each one offering testimony. Esteban spoke in halting English about how Leon had taught him techniques that made his work easier. Another hand talked about the time she'd stayed up all night helping him repair a wagon so he could make a delivery on time. The crowd's mood shifted. Leon could feel it, the suspicion giving way to something else. Not full acceptance, maybe, but not hostility either. Hayes looked around, realized he was outnumbered, and backed down. Fine, whatever. I'm just saying what others are thinking. Then they can think quieter, Cole said. The demonstration continued, more subdued, but without further incident. Afterwards, people ate the food, drank the drinks, talked amongst themselves. Leon couldn't tell if they'd won or lost, if this had helped or made things worse. It was near sunset when she saw Brennan arrive. He came alone, riding up with that same oil-slick smile, looking around like he owned the place. Cole spotted him too, his face going dark. You weren't invited, Cole said flatly. It's an open gathering, isn't it? I'm part of the community. Brennan dismounted, handed his reins to a nearby ranch hand like the kid was a servant. Thought I'd come see what all the fuss is about. See it and leave. Now. No need to be hostile. Brennan walked over to the food table, helped himself to a plate. This is quite the spread. Must have cost a pretty penny. That Chinese money sure does spend easy, doesn't it? Several people nearby shifted uncomfortably. Cole's fists clenched. You know, Mercer, Brennan continued, louder now, playing to the crowd. I've been thinking about your arrangement with Mr. Chen, and I have to wonder, what exactly does he get out of this? 10% of profits seems generous. Makes me think maybe there's more to this deal than you're letting on. There's nothing more, Cole said through gritted teeth. Really? Because I heard Mr. Chen runs gambling operations, opium dens. Some say he's laundering money through legitimate businesses. Brennan took a bite of food, chewed thoughtfully. Just makes me wonder if that's what this ranch is. A front for criminal money. The crowd was dead silent now. Every eye was on them. That's a lie, Liu said, stepping forward. His English was heavily accented but clear. Mr. Chen is a legitimate businessman. He owns restaurants, hotels, shipping company, all legal, all proper. So you say, Brennan said. But how would anyone here know? How can we trust? You want proof? Leon's voice cut across the yard, sharp and loud. She was shaking with anger, but her words were steady. You want to know what kind of man Mr. Chen is? I will tell you. I will tell everyone. She walked to the center of the yard, forcing Brennan to turn to face her. The crowd pressed in, listening. When my husband died, Leon said, I had nothing. No money, no family, no home. Mr. Chen offered me job in his restaurant. Good job, good pay. He did not have to do this. I was nobody to him. But he did it anyway because he knew my husband's work, because he believed in helping our community. She paused, gathering herself. Later, he offered me different position. One I did not want. I refused him. He was angry. He could have thrown me out, ruined me. Instead, he let me go with dignity, gave me reference, helped me find other work. This is not action of criminal. This is action of decent man. Or, Brennan interjected, it's the action of a man who's very good at appearing decent while... And when I wrote to him about this ranch, Leon continued, not letting him finish, I did not beg. I did not promise anything improper. I presented business opportunity. He responded with fair terms, with honest money. Mr. Liu brought paperwork, contracts, everything legal and proper. If you want, you can examine them yourself. Liu produced a folder from his saddlebag, held it up. All documents, all in order. Bank has copies. Lawyer has copies. Everything legal. Brennan's smile finally faltered. Well, that's all very convenient, but nothing, Cole said. He stepped up beside Leon and his voice carried across the yard. I've known most of you for years. You know me. You know I run this ranch honest. If I thought for 1 second that Chen's money was dirty, I wouldn't have taken it. I'd rather lose everything than compromise that. He looked around to the gathered faces. But I'll tell you what I think. I think Marcus Brennan wanted to buy this ranch cheap, and when that didn't work, he tried to ruin it. Spreading lies, making threats. And now he's here, making accusations he can't prove, trying one last time to undermine us. That's slander, Brennan said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's the truth. Everyone here knows it. Cole's gaze was steady. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. Now. And you're not coming back. And if I hear one more rumor, one more lie, one more word about Mrs. Zhao or Mr. Chen or this ranch that came from you, I will end you. Maybe not with fists, maybe not even legally, but I will make sure you regret every damn word. The threat hung in the air, cold and absolute. Brennan looked around, saw no support, no sympathy, just a lot of people tired of his games. Fine, he said tightly, but this isn't over. Yeah, it is, Frank said. Get out. Brennan mounted his horse with as much dignity as he could muster, which wasn't much. He rode off into the gathering dusk, and Leon felt something loosen in her chest. The crowd began to disperse, people drifting to their wagons. But before they left, several came up to Leon and Cole. That was well said, Mrs. Zhao, one woman said. I'm sorry if we doubted you. The work you've done here is impressive, a rancher added. My barn could use someone with your skills if you ever take outside work. Good luck to you both, another said, shaking Cole's hand. Give Brennan hell. By the time everyone was gone, Leanne was exhausted. She sat on the porch steps, watching the last light fade from the sky. Cole sat beside her. You were incredible today. I was angry. Sometimes that's the same thing. He was quiet for a moment. Thank you for defending Chen, for defending the ranch, for defending us. It needed to be said. Yeah, but it took courage to say it. He looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw something that made her heart skip. You belong here, Leon. I hope you know that. I am starting to, she said softly. They sat in the dark, shoulders almost touching, listening to the night sounds of the ranch. And for the first time since arriving in Montana, Leon felt like maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all along. A place to call home. The weeks after the gathering brought a shift that Leanne could feel in her bones. The ranch hands worked with a different energy, like they'd survived something together and come out stronger. Orders for cattle started coming in steadier, some from buyers who'd been at the event and seen the operation firsthand. Even in town, the sideways glances became fewer, replaced by cautious nods or the occasional tip of a hat. But Brennan's silence worried her more than his threats ever had. Man like that doesn't just give up, Frank said one morning as they inventoried supplies in the barn. He's planning something. Maybe he realized he lost, Leon suggested, though she didn't believe it herself. Men like Brennan don't lose. They just change tactics. Frank was right, but there was nothing to do except keep working. Liu had settled into ranch life with surprising ease, helping with bookkeeping and correspondence, teaching some of the hands basic Cantonese so they could communicate better. He and Leon fell into an easy companionship, speaking their native language over meals, sharing stories about San Francisco, about home. Cole watched these exchanges with an expression Leon couldn't quite read. Not jealousy exactly, something more complicated. You miss it? He asked her one evening as they walked the fence line, checking for winter damage. China. Sometimes, Leon admitted, I miss the food, the language everywhere, not having to think before I speak. But China, I remember, is gone now. Revolution changed everything. My family's village, my father's workshop, all gone. What about San Francisco? She thought about it. San Francisco was safer than here. More Chinese people, less strange, but also more crowded, more competitive. Everyone fighting for same small space. She glanced at him. Here, there is room. Room to breathe, to build, to be something new. Even with people like Brennan. Every place has people like Brennan. At least here, I can see them coming. Cole smiled at that, but it faded quickly. Liu's going back to San Francisco next month. Said he's seen enough to report to Chen that the investment's sound. That's good. Yeah. Cole was quiet for a moment. You ever think about going back with him? The question caught Leon off guard. Why would I? I don't know. Maybe you'd rather be around your own people. Maybe this life is harder than you thought it'd be. Lynn stopped walking, turned to face him. Cole Mercer, are you trying to get rid of me? What? No, Because if Ranch cannot afford to keep me, you should just say so. Don't make excuses about what I might want. That's not what I meant, Cole said, looking genuinely distressed. I want to make sure you're here because you want to be, not because you feel trapped. Trapped? Leon almost laughed. You think I feel trapped? I think you ended up here because you had nowhere else to go. And maybe now that you have options, now that Chen's money means you could go anywhere, I choose here, Leon interrupted. I choose this ranch, this work. I choose... She stopped herself, the words catching in her throat. What had she been about to say? I choose you? Cole was staring at her, his eyes intense. You choose what? I choose to stay, she said finally. Unless you don't want me to. I want you to stay, Cole said, his voice rough. More than I probably should. The admission hung between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Leon's heart was hammering. They were standing too close, close enough that she could see the rise and fall of his chest, could smell the leather and wood smoke that always clung to him. Cole. A shout from the direction of the barn cut her off. They turned to see Miller running toward them, waving his arms. Boss, fire! The storage shed's on fire! They ran. By the time they reached the shed, flames were already eating through the roof. This shed was smaller than the hay barn, but it held tools, seed for spring planting, equipment they couldn't easily replace. Get water, Cole shouted. Same as before, bucket line from the creek. The men moved fast, muscle memory from the last fire taking over. But this fire was different. It was burning hotter, faster, and the wind was picking up, blowing embers toward the main barn. Leon grabbed a bucket, joined the line. Her mind was racing. 2 fires in 2 months. That wasn't coincidence. Someone had done this, and she had a good idea who. Boss, Tommy yelled from near the shed. There's someone in there. Cole's head snapped around. What? I heard yelling. Someone's trapped. Without hesitation, Cole ran toward the burning building. Frank grabbed for him, missed. Cole, don't... But Cole was already at the door, kicking it open, disappearing into the smoke. Leon's stomach dropped. She dropped her bucket and ran after him, ignoring Frank's shouts. Inside, the heat was overwhelming. Smoke choked the air, made her eyes stream. She pulled her scarf over her nose and mouth, squinted through the haze. Cole! Here! His voice came from the back of the shed. Help me! Leon stumbled toward the sound, found Cole crouched over a figure on the ground. In the flickering firelight, she recognized him. One of Brennan's men, the one who'd been with him at the gathering. He was unconscious, a gash on his forehead bleeding freely. He was trying to get out, Cole grunted, hooking his arms under the man's shoulders. Must have got turned around in the smoke. We need to move, Leon said. Above them, a beam cracked ominously. Now! Together they hauled the man toward the door. The smoke was getting thicker, the heat more intense. Leanne's lungs burned. Her vision was going dark at the edges. Then hands grabbed her, pulled her forward. Frank and Miller, dragging them all out into the cold air. Leanne collapsed on the ground, coughing so hard she thought her ribs would crack. When she could finally breathe again, she looked up to see the shed fully engulfed, flames reaching 30 feet high. The men had given up trying to save it, were focused on keeping the fire from spreading. Cole was on his knees beside her, his face black with soot, coughing just as hard. And a few feet away, Brennan's man was starting to come around, groaning and clutching his head. What the hell was he doing in there? Frank demanded. The man's eyes opened, focused blearily on the crowd surrounding him. Fear flashed across his face. I don't... You were setting a fire, Cole said flatly. Weren't you? No, I swear I was just... Just what? Just happened to be in my storage shed when it caught fire? The man looked around desperately, like he was searching for an escape route. Brennan said, He said he just wanted to send a message, scare you a little. I didn't think it would spread so fast, I swear. A message. Cole's voice was deadly quiet. You burned down my building to send a message. It was supposed to be small, just enough to... Cole's fist connected with the man's jaw before anyone could stop him. The man went down hard, blood spraying from his split lip. Boss! Frank grabbed Cole's arm. That's enough. The hell it is. Cole shook him off, turned on the downed man. You could have killed us all. The fire could have spread to the barn, the house, everything. I'm sorry, the man blubbered, scrambling backward. Please, I'm sorry. Leanne stood, put herself between Cole and the arsonist. Cole. Stop. Why? He tried to burn us out. I know, but beating him won't fix anything. She looked down at Brennan's man with cold contempt. He is pathetic, not worth your anger. Cole was breathing hard, his fists still clenched. But after a moment, he stepped back. Get him out of here, he told Frank. Take him to the sheriff. Tell them what happened. Press charges. The sheriff won't do anything, Miller said. Brennan probably has him in his pocket. Then we make sure everyone in town knows what happened, Cole said. We make sure they know Brennan tried to burn us out, that he's willing to kill to get what he wants. By dawn, the storage shed was nothing but charred remains. They'd lost most of the spring seed, several valuable tools, and a season's worth of stored supplies. The damage was significant, but not catastrophic. They'd survive. The question was what happened next. Brennan's escalating, Lou said over breakfast. His face was grim. This is more than business competition now. This is personal. It's been personal since Leanne embarrassed him at the gathering, Frank said. Man's got an ego the size of Montana. So what do we do? Tommy asked. We can't just wait for him to burn down the whole ranch. No, Cole agreed. We can't. He looked at Leanne across the table, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. He was planning something. Later, in his office, Cole spread out a map of the area. Brennan's ranch is here, he pointed. His main operation is cattle, same as us, but he also owns the general store, the feed supplier, and has stakes in half the businesses in town. He has monopoly, Leanne said. Basically, which means he can squeeze out anyone who crosses him, control prices, cut off supplies, make it impossible to operate. So how do we fight that? Cole traced a line on the map. We bypass him. We've already started with the direct cattle sales that cuts him out of the auction house he partly owns. We need to do the same with supplies, order from Denver, Cheyenne, anywhere but here. That's more expensive, Frank pointed out. Shipping costs alone. Will still be cheaper than letting Brennan strangle us slowly. Cole leaned back. And there's something else. I've been talking to some of the other ranchers, the smaller operations. They're tired of Brennan's games too. If we organize, pool resources, we could create our own supply chain, cut him out entirely. That's ambitious, Lou said, and dangerous. If Brennan sees you organizing against him, he'll do what? Burn more buildings? Cole's voice was hard. He's already tried that. We're done playing defense. Over the next weeks, Cole and Leanne worked to build the coalition. They rode to neighboring ranches, met with owners, made their pitch. Some were interested. Others were too afraid of Brennan's retaliation. But slowly, painfully, a network began to form. The Johnsons to the east signed on. The widow Martinez, who ran a small cattle operation to the south. 3 brothers who owned adjacent properties to the west. Not enough to overthrow Brennan's grip on the region, but enough to create an alternative. It's a start, Cole said one night, reviewing the agreements. If we can get through one season showing this works, others will join. Leanne was less optimistic. She'd seen how power worked, how men like Brennan held on to it. He will fight back, harder than before. Let him. We're ready this time. But ready turned out to be relative. The first sign of trouble came when their feed order from Denver was mysteriously delayed. The second was when the bank suddenly required an audit of their books, citing irregularities that didn't exist. The third was when the sheriff showed up with questions about the fire, implying that maybe Cole had staged it himself for insurance money. This is Brennan, Frank said after the sheriff left. He's using every connection he has to harass us. Then we document everything, Cole said. Every delay, every false accusation, every piece of harassment. Build a case. Against who? The law's in his pocket. Not the territorial law, not the federal marshals. Cole's eyes were hard. If we can prove he's breaking laws, arson, conspiracy, maybe even fraud, we can go over the local authorities' heads. It was a long shot, but it was something. While Cole worked the legal angle, Leanne threw herself into making the ranch more efficient, more self-sufficient. She designed a new workshop, larger and better equipped. She trained Tommy and 2 other hands in advanced carpentry, creating a team that could handle most repairs without outside help. She even started a small furniture-making operation on the side, selling pieces to some of the buyers they'd connected with for cattle. "You're building an empire," Lou joked one day, watching her oversee the workshop construction. "I'm building stability," Leanne corrected, "so we never depend on people like Brennan again." Lou was quiet for a moment, then, "Mr. Chen would be proud. He always said the best revenge is success." "This isn't about revenge, isn't it?" Lou smiled slightly. "You're proving everyone who doubted you wrong. Everyone who said you didn't belong couldn't do it. That's revenge, even if you don't call it that." Maybe he was right. Leanne didn't mind. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of Brennan's own men, not the arsonist but another ranch hand, showed up at the Mercer Ranch late one night, hat in hand. "I got information," he told Cole, "about Brennan, things he's done that the law might care about." Cole brought him into the office, along with Leanne and Frank. The man, his name was Carson, looked nervous but determined. "I've worked for Brennan for 5 years," he said. "Seen a lot. Most of it I could stomach, but lately, it's gotten worse." The fire wasn't the first time he ordered someone to sabotage a competitor. There was a rancher last year who wouldn't sell to him. Brennan had his water rights challenged, spread rumors about his cattle being diseased. Man lost everything, had to sell at a fraction of what the place was worth. "Can you prove this?" Cole asked. "I kept records, letters, financial documents. Brennan's not as careful as he thinks." Carson pulled a bundle of papers from inside his coat. "I copied what I could." Leanne took the papers, started reading. Even with her imperfect English, she could see the damning evidence, payoffs to local officials, falsified reports, correspondence planning various sabotages. "Why are you doing this?" she asked Carson. "Because I'm tired of working for a man with no honor, and because—" He hesitated. "My sister married a Chinese man in San Francisco. They're good people. When I heard how Brennan talked about you, ma'am, the things he said, it made me sick." Leanne felt something loosen in her chest. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Brennan finds out I did this. I'm dead." "Then we move fast," Cole said. "How quickly can we get this to the territorial marshal?" "I can take it," Frank offered. "Leave tomorrow. Be in Helena in 3 days." "Do it." The next 72 hours were tense. Carson stayed at the ranch, effectively in hiding. They doubled the watch, kept rifles close. Everyone was waiting for Brennan's retaliation, for the other shoe to drop. It came on the 3rd night. Leanne woke to the sound of hoofbeats, men shouting. She grabbed her coat and ran outside to find the yard full of riders, at least 20 of them, carrying torches and guns. Brennan sat at the front, mounted on a black stallion, his face twisted with rage. "Come out, Mercer," he shouted. "I know Carson's in there. Send him out or we'll come in and get him." Cole emerged from the bunkhouse, rifle in hand. Behind him, the ranch hands were arming themselves. "You're trespassing, Brennan. Leave now, or I'll shoot you for it." "You're harboring a thief. Carson stole from me, and I want him back." "Carson came here of his own free will. He's under my protection." "Your protection means nothing," Brennan's horse pranced nervously. "You think you can stand against me? Against all of us?" Leanne counted the men with Brennan. 22, all armed. The ranch had 15 hands, plus Cole, Frank, Lou, herself. They were outnumbered, and Brennan knew it. "Last chance," Brennan said. "Hand over Carson, and we'll leave peaceful. Refuse, and we'll take him. And burn this place to the ground while we're at it." Cole raised his rifle. "You're not taking anyone, and you're not burning anything. Now get off my land before—" A gunshot cracked through the night. Everyone froze. Then, from the darkness beyond Brennan's men, a voice called out, "That was a warning shot. Next one goes through someone's skull." Riders emerged from the shadows, the Johnsons, the Martinez widow, the 3 brothers, and others. At least 30 of them, all armed, all aimed at Brennan's group. "Seems you're outnumbered now, Marcus," Old Man Johnson called out. "How about you take your boys and get gone before this turns ugly?" Brennan's face was purple with fury. "You're all making a mistake. When the law hears about this—" The law already knows, a new voice said. A man rode up from the road, older, with a badge pinned to his coat. The territorial marshal. And behind him, more riders. Official ones. Marcus Brennan, the marshal said. You're under arrest for arson, conspiracy to commit fraud, bribery of public officials, and about a dozen other charges. You have the right to— This is ridiculous, Brennan sputtered. You can't possibly— I've got signed statements, physical evidence, and about 6 witnesses ready to testify. So, yeah, I can. The marshal gestured to his men. Take him. The arrest was swift and brutal. Brennan fought, shouted, threatened. His men scattered, most of them dropping their weapons and running. Within minutes, it was over. Cole lowered his rifle, looked at Frank. You move fast. Had good motivation, Frank said, grinning. Plus, Carson's documents were pretty damning. Marshall didn't need much convincing. The coalition ranchers stayed until dawn, celebrating with coffee and whatever food could be scrounged. It felt like a victory, and maybe it was. But Leanne couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something bigger. You all right? Cole asked, finding her sitting on the porch steps as the sun rose. Just thinking. About? About how things change. 2 months ago I was nobody. Now I'm part of this. She gestured at the gathering of ranchers, at the ranch, at everything. It's strange. Cole sat beside her. Strange good or strange bad? Strange, real. She looked at him. For a long time after my husband died, I felt like ghost, like I was just going through motions, waiting for life to start again. But this feels like living. Good, Cole said softly. You deserve to feel alive. Their shoulders were touching, and neither of them moved away. Leanne's heart was doing that thing again, that hammering thing that happened whenever Cole was too close. Cole, she started, not sure what she was going to say. I need to tell you. Mrs. Zhao! Liu was running toward them, waving a letter. This just arrived. Express delivery from San Francisco. Lian took the letter, recognized Mr. Chen's seal. Inside was a short message and a longer legal document. Mrs. Zhao, the message read. I am pleased to hear of your success in Montana. So pleased, in fact, that I would like to expand our arrangement. I am prepared to invest an additional $20,000 in the Mercer Ranch in exchange for a full partnership, myself, Mr. Mercer, and you as equal partners. I believe the 3 of us could build something unprecedented. Please review the attached contract and respond at your earliest convenience. Leanne's hand shook as she read it twice, then a third time. What does it say? Cole asked. She handed him the letter, watched his face as he read. His expression went from confusion to shock to something else. Something that looked like hope and fear, mixed together. He wants to make you a partner, Cole said slowly. A full partner, equal to me and him. Yes. That's incredible, Leanne. That's more than just a job. That's a future, she finished. A real one. Cole looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw everything she'd been afraid to name. Is that what you want? To be my partner? The question had layers, and they both knew it. Partner in business, partner in the ranch, partner in something more. Yes, Leanne said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. That's what I want. Cole smiled, a real smile that transformed his whole face. Then let's do it. Let's build something that lasts. He held out his hand, and Leanne took it. The handshake lingered, became something else. Fingers intertwining, palms pressed together, a promise being made without words. Around them, the ranch was waking up. The men were heading to breakfast, the livestock were stirring, and the sun was painting the plains in shades of gold. It was a new day, the start of something neither of them could fully see yet, but both were willing to reach for. And for the first time since her husband's death, Leanne felt like the future wasn't something to fear. It was something to build piece by piece, with hands that knew how to fix what was broken and create what hadn't existed before. Together, the partnership papers arrived 3 weeks later, drawn up by lawyers in San Francisco and reviewed by attorneys in Helena. Cole spread them across his desk while Leanne, Lou, and Frank crowded around to read. The terms were generous: equal shares, equal say, equal responsibility. Chen would remain a silent partner, managing the financial side from California while Cole and Leon ran operations in Montana. "It's almost too good," Frank said, squinting at the legal language. "What's the catch?" "No catch," Liu said. "Mr. Chen believes in long-term investments. He thinks this ranch, with proper management, will be worth 10 times what it is now in 5 years. And he trusts us to make that happen?" Cole looked skeptical. "He trusts Mrs. Zhao," Liu corrected. "And she trusts you. That's enough for him." Lian felt the weight of that trust settle on her shoulders. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just heavy, real. She picked up the pen, dipped it in ink, and signed her name in careful English letters. Then, because it felt right, she added the characters of her Chinese name below it. Cole signed next, his signature bold and sure. When it was done, they all just stood there for a moment, staring at the documents like they might disappear. "So that's it?" Frank said finally. "We're official?" "We're official," Cole confirmed. Then he looked at Lian, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or acknowledgement of how far they'd come from that first day in Hendrick's store. "Partners." "Partners," Lian echoed. What she didn't say was that the word had started to mean something different to her, something that had nothing to do with contracts and everything to do with the way Cole looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. Spring came hard that year, the thaw arriving in floods and mud that turned the ranch into a swamp for 2 solid weeks. But with it came opportunities. The new cattle breeding program started showing results: healthier calves, better weight gain, traits that buyers noticed and paid premium for. The furniture operation expanded, with Lian training 3 more hands in woodworking and taking custom orders from as far as Denver. And the coalition of ranchers they'd formed grew stronger. Weekly meetings rotated between properties, discussing everything from shared equipment purchases to coordinated cattle drives. What had started as a defensive measure against Brennan became something bigger, a network of small operations learning they were stronger together than apart. Brennan himself was still in jail, his trial delayed by legal maneuvering and corruption that ran deeper than anyone had realized. But his ranch was being run into the ground by an incompetent nephew, and the merchants he'd controlled were slowly finding their independence. The town was changing, becoming something less dependent on one man's whims. "You did that," Cole told Lian one evening as they watched the sunset from the new workshop she'd designed. "You stood up to him when everyone else was too afraid. That gave other people courage." "I didn't do anything special," Lian protested. "I just refused to leave." "That's exactly what made it special." Cole was leaning against the workbench she'd built, looking at her in that way that made her stomach flip. "Most people would have run. You stayed and fought. I had nowhere else to run to." "I don't believe that. You could have gone back to San Francisco with Liu, could have taken Chen's money and started over somewhere easier." He pushed off the bench, moved closer. "You stayed because you wanted to, because this place means something to you." He was right, but Lian wasn't ready to examine why too closely. The ranch had become home in a way she hadn't expected. Not just the land or the buildings, but the people. Frank's gruff kindness, Tommy's eager questions, even Miller's reformed smart mouth. And Cole. Cole had become something she didn't have words for in either language. "It does mean something," she admitted. "More than I thought it would." Cole reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear the way he had that night in the barn. But this time he didn't pull away. His hand lingered, warm against her cheek. "Lian," he started, his voice rough. "I need to tell you—" "Boss!" Tommy's voice shattered the moment. He was running from the main house, waving a telegram. "Boss, you gotta see this!" Cole dropped his hand, stepped back. Lian felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. The telegram was from the territorial marshal. Brennan's trial date had been set, 2 weeks from now in Helena. They'd need Cole to testify, and possibly Lian and Carson as well. 2 weeks, Frank said when they gathered to discuss it. "That's not much time to prepare." "What's to prepare?" Miller asked. "We tell the truth, show the evidence. Brennan goes to prison." "It's not that simple," Liu cautioned. "Brennan still has friends, still has money. He'll have expensive lawyers, people willing to lie for him. This won't be easy." He was right. Over the next 2 weeks, they received 3 separate offers, bribes, really, to not testify or to soften their testimony. The first came as a letter, offering $5,000 to reconsider your involvement. The second came through a middleman, suggesting that accidents sometimes happen to people who cause trouble. The third was delivered in person by Brennan's nephew, a weaselly man named Robert, who showed up at the ranch with a mix of threats and pleading. "My uncle's not a bad man," Robert insisted, sitting across from Cole in the office. "He just got carried away, made some mistakes. But if you testify, you'll ruin him. Ruin his whole family." "He tried to ruin us first," Cole said flatly. "Nearly succeeded." "That was business, just competition, nothing personal. He burned down 2 of my buildings, nearly killed people. That's not business, Robert. That's criminal." "Please," Robert's voice took on a whining quality. "I'll lose everything if he goes to prison. The ranch, the businesses, all of it. I've got a wife, kids." "Should have thought of that before you helped him," Leanne said coldly. She'd been listening from the corner, and she was done with the Brennan family's excuses. "You knew what he was doing. You helped. Now you face consequences." Robert turned to her, his face ugly. "You. This is all because of you. If you just stayed where you belonged, none of this would have happened." Cole was out of his chair before Leanne could respond, grabbing Robert by the collar and hauling him up. "Get out, now, before I throw you out. You'll regret this," Robert sputtered as Cole shoved him toward the door. "All of you will regret this." After he left, Leanne sat in the chair he'd vacated, suddenly exhausted. "They're not going to stop, are they? Even after trial, even if Brennan goes to prison, the family will keep coming after us." "Maybe," Cole admitted, "but we'll handle it, same as we've handled everything else." He crouched beside her chair. "You're not alone in this, Leanne. Whatever happens, we face it together." The words were meant to comfort, but they made Leanne's chest ache, because she was starting to understand that what she felt for Cole Mercer wasn't gratitude or friendship or partnership in the business sense. It was something deeper, more complicated, and infinitely more dangerous. She'd loved her husband, loved him fiercely, completely, and when he died, she'd thought that part of her died too. But here was Cole, making her feel things she'd thought were gone forever, and she didn't know what to do with that. The trip to Helena took 3 days by train. Cole, Leanne, Carson, and Frank made the journey together, leaving Lou in charge of the ranch. The territorial capital was bigger than any town Leon had seen since San Francisco. Actual paved streets, buildings 3 and 4 stories tall, people everywhere. The courthouse was an imposing structure of stone and marble, built to intimidate. Leanne felt small walking up its steps, felt the weight of what they were about to do. This wasn't just about Brennan anymore. This was about whether people like her, outsiders, immigrants, women, could stand up to power and be believed. The trial started on a Monday. The prosecution laid out their case methodically: the documented evidence of bribery, the testimony about the fires, the financial records showing fraud. Carson testified first, his voice shaking but steady, detailing years of illegal activities he'd witnessed. Brennan's lawyers tried to destroy him on cross-examination, painting him as a disgruntled employee with a grudge, a thief trying to deflect blame. But Carson held firm, and the documents backed up every word he said. Cole testified next, describing the fires, the threats, the systematic campaign to drive him out of business. He was calm, factual, unshakable. The lawyers tried to rattle him, suggested he'd staged the fires himself, that he'd fabricated evidence. Cole just looked at them with those cold gray eyes and said, "I have no reason to lie. Brennan does." Then it was Leon's turn. Walking to the witness stand felt like walking through water. Everything slow and strange and unreal. She placed her hand on the Bible to swear in, though the words felt hollow. She didn't believe in this book, but she believed in truth. The prosecutor was gentle with her, asking about her arrival at the ranch, about Brennan's threats, about the gathering where he'd spread lies. Leanne answered carefully, choosing her words, trying to make them understand. Then Brennan's lawyer stood up for cross-examination, and Leanne knew this was where the real fight would be. "Mrs. Zhao," the lawyer said, his tone oily, "you're not actually from Montana, are you?" "No, I am from China originally. And you came here under what circumstances?" "I came to America with my husband. He died. I came to Montana looking for work." "Looking for work?" The lawyer smiled. "Or looking for something else? A wealthy rancher, perhaps. A man who could provide for you." The implication was clear. and Leanne felt anger flare hot in her chest. "I came looking for honest work, nothing more. And yet, within weeks of arriving, you'd secured a position on Mr. Mercer's ranch, moved into his home, become his partner." The word was loaded with insinuation. "I earned my place through my work," Leanne said, her voice hard. "I fixed what was broken. I solved problems. That is why I am partner." Or perhaps, the lawyer suggested, you manipulated a lonely widower, used your feminine wiles to secure a position you weren't qualified for. And now, to protect that position, you're willing to lie about my client. "That's a lie," Cole said loudly from the gallery. The judge banged his gavel, told him to be quiet. But Leanne didn't need Cole to defend her. She leaned forward, looked the lawyer dead in the eye, and said in clear, precise English, "I have lied about nothing. Your client tried to burn us out because he could not stand that I, a Chinese woman, had what he wanted, that I was better at business than he was, that I did not bow to his threats." Her voice rose. "He is criminal. He is coward. And you defending him with these lies about me, you are no better." The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Brennan's lawyer looked flustered, tried to regain control of the questioning, but Leanne had seized the momentum. "You want to know about my character?" she continued. "Ask the ranchers who joined our coalition. Ask the workers I trained. Ask the buyers who pay premium for our cattle because they trust our quality. Ask anyone except the man who tried to destroy us because we would not submit." The lawyer tried a few more questions, but his heart wasn't in it anymore. Leon had turned his attack back on him, and everyone in the courtroom had seen it. When she stepped down from the stand, Cole was waiting in the hallway. He didn't say anything, just pulled her into a hug that was probably inappropriate for a public courthouse, but Leon didn't care. She held on to him, letting herself shake now that the adrenaline was fading. "You were incredible," he said into her hair. "Absolutely incredible. I was angry. You were honest. That's what mattered." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, their verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Brennan to 15 years in territorial prison, plus restitution to all the ranchers he'd defrauded. In the courtroom, Brennan's face went purple with rage. He started shouting, had to be restrained by deputies. His nephew Robert stormed out, slamming doors. But the other spectators, many of them people who'd suffered under Brennan's control for years, looked relieved. Some even applauded. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them, asking questions. Cole handled most of it, but one reporter addressed Leon directly. "Mrs. Zhao, you're one of the first Chinese women to testify in a territorial court. How does it feel to have won?" Leon thought about it. "It feels like justice. Like the law can work for everyone, not just powerful men. I hope other people see this and know you can fight back. You can win." The quote made newspapers across the territory. Some praised her courage. Others criticized her impertinence. But Leanne didn't care about either. What mattered was that they'd won, that Brennan was finished, and that maybe the victory meant something bigger than just one ranch. The train ride home was quieter, exhaustion settling over all of them. Frank and Carson dozed in their seats. But Cole and Leanne sat together in the observation car watching the landscape roll by, neither quite ready to sleep. "What happens now?" Leanne asked. "Now we build," Cole said. "We take Chen's investment, we expand the operation, we make the ranch into everything we know it can be." "That's not what I mean." Cole looked at her, and in the dim light of the train car his eyes were soft. "What do you mean?" Leanne gathered her courage. "I mean us. What happens with us?" The question hung between them, impossible to take back. Cole was quiet for so long that Leanne started to regret asking. Then he said, "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know," Leanne admitted. "My husband died only 7 months ago. I should still be mourning. I should not be feeling what I'm feeling." "And what are you feeling?" She looked at him, at this man who'd given her a chance when no one else would, who'd stood beside her through fires and threats and trials, who looked at her like she was something precious. "Like maybe I'm allowed to start living again," she said quietly. "Like maybe wanting something for myself isn't betrayal." Cole reached over, took her hand. "Your husband would want you to be happy, Leanne. I'm sure of it." "You didn't know him." "No. But I know you. And I know anyone who loved you would want you to have a full life, not half a life spent in mourning." Tears pricked Leanne's eyes. "What if I'm not ready? What if I can't?" Then we wait, Cole said simply. We take this as slow as you need. I'm not going anywhere. The promise settled something in Leanne's chest. She didn't have to decide everything right now. Didn't have to choose between honoring her past and embracing her future. She could do both, in whatever time felt right. She squeezed Cole's hand. Thank you. For what? For being patient. For seeing me as more than just what other people see. I see exactly who you are, Cole said. And who you are is pretty damn remarkable. They sat like that for hours, hands linked, watching the dark landscape pass, neither sleeping but both feeling like they'd finally found something resembling peace. When they got back to the ranch, Liu had news. 2 more ranchers wanted to join the coalition. A buyer from Chicago was interested in a long-term contract for premium beef, and Mr. Chen had written, praising their victory and suggesting they consider expanding into horse breeding as well. The man never stops thinking about business, Frank said, reading over the letters. That's why he's successful, Leanne said. But she was smiling. The next months were a blur of work and growth. They hired more hands, carefully, learning from past mistakes. They built new structures, including a proper bunkhouse that could house 20 men comfortably. They upgraded equipment, improved breeding stock, started the horse program Chen had suggested. And slowly, carefully, Leanne and Cole navigated whatever was growing between them. It wasn't romance like in stories. There were no grand declarations, no sweeping gestures, just small moments that accumulated into something solid. Cole bringing her coffee in the workshop exactly how she liked it. Leanne mending his favorite jacket without being asked. Hands brushing as they worked side by side. Conversations that stretched late into the night. Frank noticed, of course. About damn time, he muttered one day, watching them work together on a new fence design. What? Leanne asked, genuinely confused. Nothing, just, you're good together, good for each other. He paused. Ranch runs better when you two are actually talking instead of dancing around whatever this is. We are business partners, Leanne said primly. Frank snorted. Sure you are. And I'm the Queen of England. But he wasn't wrong. The ranch did run better. Everything worked more smoothly when she and Cole were in sync, when they could anticipate each other's needs and decisions. It was partnership in the truest sense. 2 people who made each other stronger. Summer brought the first cattle drive to Chicago, a massive undertaking that involved coordinating with 3 other ranches and hiring temporary drovers. Cole led it personally, taking Tommy and Miller with him. He was gone 6 weeks, and Leanne was surprised by how much she missed him. The ranch didn't fall apart without him. She and Frank managed fine. But every evening when she sat down to dinner, she found herself looking at his empty chair, waiting for his opinion on the day's problems, missing his quiet presence. When he returned, sunburned and exhausted but grinning, her heart did something stupid and obvious. We did it, he announced to the assembled hands. Sold every head for premium prices. The Chicago buyers loved the quality, want to make it a regular arrangement. The celebration that night was loud and joyous, but later, when everyone else had gone to bed, Cole found Leanne in the barn, checking on a mare that was due to foal soon. You're supposed to be celebrating, he said. I am. In my way. She ran her hand along the mare's flank. Besides, someone needs to make sure everything's all right here. Everything's more than all right. It's thriving. Cole moved to stand beside her. You did that, you know. While I was gone, you kept everything running perfectly. Frank told me you handled 2 emergencies and a supply shortage without even sending a telegram. It's my job, Leanne said. It's more than a job. Cole turned to face her. Leanne, I've been thinking about something. The whole time I was on that drive, all I could think about was getting back here. Not to the ranch, to you. And I think I need to stop pretending that what I feel is just professional respect or friendship or partnership in the business sense. Leanne's heart started pounding. Cole? Let me finish. Please. He took a breath. I love you. I think I've loved you since that day you fixed the barn door, maybe even before that. And I know it's complicated. I know you're still dealing with grief. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is a bad idea. But I needed you to know. I needed to stop hiding it. Leanne stood frozen, the words washing over her. Part of her wanted to run, to protect herself from the vulnerability of this moment. But a bigger part, the part that had been slowly coming back to life over the past months, wanted to stay. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. I loved my husband. I still love him. And I feel guilty, feeling this way about you. I know that too. But she looked up at Cole, saw the hope and fear warring in his expression. But I think I love you too, and I don't know what to do with that. Cole's face broke into a smile, relief and joy mixed together. We don't have to do anything right now. We can just acknowledge it, let it be what it is. And what is it? A beginning, Cole said. However slow, however uncertain, just a beginning. He held out his hand and Leon took it. This time when their fingers intertwined, it felt like a promise, not of perfection or certainty, but of possibility, of choosing each other despite the complications, despite the fear, despite everything. The mare shifted behind them, and Leon laughed softly. We should probably focus on this. She's going to foal soon. Always practical, Cole teased. Someone has to be. They worked together through the night, helping the mare deliver a healthy foal as the sun rose. It felt symbolic somehow. New life, new beginnings, the cycle continuing. And when the foal finally stood on shaky legs, taking its first steps, Leon felt something shift in her chest. She could do this. Could honor her past while building her future. Could be both the widow who still loved her husband and the woman falling in love with someone new. She didn't have to choose between them. She could be whole. Fall came, bringing with it the first anniversary of Leon's arrival in Montana. The ranch held a celebration, partly for her, partly for the collective success they'd achieved. The coalition ranchers attended, along with people from town who'd come to respect what they'd built. During the speeches, Old Man Johnson stood up. A year ago, most of us thought Cole Mercer was crazy for hiring a Chinese woman carpenter. Some of us, I'll admit it, thought it was improper. But Mrs. Zhao proved us all wrong. She didn't just earn her place here, she elevated everything around her. This coalition, this success we're all sharing, started with her refusing to be pushed out by men like Brennan. She taught us we could fight back. So here's to Mrs. Zhao, one hell of a carpenter, one hell of a businesswoman, and one hell of a neighbor. What me? Min. The crowd cheered. Leon felt her face burn, but she stood and nodded her thanks. When she sat back down, Cole leaned over and whispered, You earned every word of that. We earned it, she corrected. Together. Winter came again, but this time Leon was ready for it. The ranch was winterized properly, supplies stored, animals sheltered. She'd built a new workshop attached to the barn, insulated and heated so she could work through even the coldest days. On Christmas Eve, Cole found her there, finishing a chair she'd been commissioned to make, a rocking chair for the widow Martinez who was expecting her first grandchild. You work too hard, he said, watching her smooth the armrest with sandpaper. I like working. I know, but it's a holiday. You're allowed to rest. Leon set down the sandpaper, stretched her aching back. Okay, what should we do instead? Cole held up a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Frank's running the evening shift. Lou's teaching the hands some gambling game. We could just talk. They ended up on the porch of the main house, wrapped in blankets against the cold, sharing the wine and watching snow fall in the lamplight. It was peaceful, quiet in a way that felt earned rather than empty. I got you something, Cole said eventually, pulling a small box from his pocket. Leon took it carefully, opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet. Engraved on the inside were words in both English and Chinese, strength in all things. Lou helped with the translation, Cole admitted. I wanted to get you something that acknowledged both parts of who you are, American and Chinese, past and present. Leon felt tears prick her eyes. It's beautiful. Here, let me. Cole fastened it around her wrist, his fingers gentle. They sat close together, the bracelet catching the light, and Leon thought about how far she'd come. From that frozen day in Hendrick's store to this moment, from invisible to essential, from lost to found, from alone to... Cole, she said quietly, I'm ready. Ready for what? To stop waiting, to stop being afraid. She turned to face him. To choose this. To choose you. Cole's eyes searched her face. You're sure? I'm sure. He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious. And maybe she was. They both were. 2 broken people who'd found a way to fit their jagged edges together, to build something stronger than either could have managed alone. When they pulled apart, Leon was smiling. My husband used to say that wood remembers what it used to be. That good carpenter doesn't fight the grain, works with it. Yeah, I think people are same way. We can't forget our past, can't erase the scars, but we can work with them, make them part of something new and strong. Cole pulled her closer. That's beautiful, Leanne. It's true, she corrected. Beauty is just bonus. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the snow-covered ranch. Around them, lights glowed in the bunkhouse where the hands were celebrating. In the barn, livestock settled for the night. The windmill turned slowly against the winter sky, repaired and functioning, a testament to problems solved and challenges overcome. This ranch, this life, this future they were building, it wasn't perfect. There would be more challenges, more hardships, more Marcus Brennans who tried to tear down what they'd created. But they'd face it the way they'd faced everything else. Together, with skill and stubbornness and the quiet strength that came from refusing to give up. Leon looked out at the land that had once seemed so foreign and hostile, and she saw home. Not because it was easy or comfortable, but because it was hers, earned through work and courage, and the simple decision to stay when leaving would have been simpler. She'd come to Montana with nothing but grief and a dead man's tools. She'd found a purpose, a partnership, and against all odds, love. Not the desperate clinging kind, but the steady, building kind. The kind that made you better, stronger, more yourself. Spring would come again. They'd plant new seeds, birth new calves, break new ground. The ranch would grow. The coalition would strengthen. And somewhere in the midst of all that work and hope, Leon would continue becoming whoever she was meant to be. Not Chinese or American, not widow or partner, not carpenter or businesswoman, but all of it at once, complex and contradictory and completely, stubbornly alive. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The snow fell softly around them, covering the scars left by fire and conflict, making the world clean and new. Tomorrow, there would be work. There would always be work. But tonight, there was just this. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely of places, choosing to build something that mattered, choosing to belong.